Assalamu alaikum participants. I would like to welcome you all for this Finance Forum webinar. And our first speaker, according to our program agenda, is Mr. Pervez Naseem. I hope my voice is audible to everyone. You can let me know in the chat box so that we can proceed with the session. Thank you so much for the reassurance. First of all, let me introduce our first speaker, Mr. Pervez Naseem, the Chairman and CEO. Mr. Naseem is the Chairman and CEO of Ansar Cooperative Housing Corporation and a member of Ansar Financial Group of Companies. He is a certified management accountant. He is a founder, manager of and chairperson of the Board of Islamic Cooperative Housing Corporation Limited. And now I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Pervez Naseem so that he can continue with his presentation. Thank you so much.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. It's my pleasure to be with you, and inshallah I will try to share what we have done in North America, especially focusing in Canada. Do we have our slides available? It's loaded, or I can upload?
Sir, I have made you the co-host so that you can share your screen with us.
Okay. All right. First of all, we would like to share this key concept of Islamic financing and insurance. Why do we need Islamic financing? Is it just because everybody's talking about it, so we just jump on the bandwagon, or there is a real reason behind this? What's the difference between Islamic finance and what is required for us to comply with in financing? First, this something we need to really focus on, the very basic concept, understanding that وَلِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Whatever is in the earth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, we really have to understand, do we really own anything in this world, or are we just a trustee and will have to account for any and all breaches of the trust, abuse, misuse, and just injustices? Allah has provided us a lot of resources, wealth. How do we use that? How do we handle that? Do we have to really account for what Allah has provided? And again, when we say that we own this, we are the owner, really? When we come to this world, we come with nothing, not even a diaper. And when we leave this world with nothing material, only our good and bad deeds go with us. So this is something we really need to focus on. And if we all keep our focus on these requirements and these concepts, we cannot afford to do injustice, anything wrong with any fellow human being, never mind Muslims, it's any human being. Because at the end of the day, nothing really matters. We go to this world, from this world with nothing except our good and bad deeds. And again, what is required for us is we have to have honesty and integrity, expect blessing and reward from our Creator, in addition to any monetary benefit. We have to be truthful, not to deceive, be conscious of social and environmental cost and benefit rather than just monetary benefit. And it's just unfortunate that most of the time we just focus on uh, monetary benefit. What is it for me? How do I get richer? But in fact, just look at that an example. Suppose if I'm looking for to establish a factory in three different parcel of land, and obviously as a businessman, I would pick the land which is most cheaper, most cost effective. But if there are families or trees on this land, would I really like to uproot the families or these trees just because it is a little cheaper? It will save me some money. So money is not the everything. Really have to focus on in a global sense. Now, when we talk about Islamic banking, unfortunately, many of us have this somehow that we just delete the word interest from all the documentation and just replace it with profit. And everything is fine, everything is kosher. That certainly is not the case. Again, as I said, that maximizing profit is not the main, most important aspect of business. Charity and social responsibility are part and parcel with the bottom line. Just we don't have to focus on the just the bottom line only. It has to be other elements as well. Now, we started housing co-op to help our community buy houses without interest. This happened in 1980 in Canada. And the concept we use is the diminishing partnership model. But I will talk a little later about the housing co-op itself. But just on the financing side, investment, uh, this came much later, but this is the big achievement, alhamdulillah, that our community uh, achieved is this interest-free public company. This is the first interest-free public company in North America, which is listed on any stock exchange, Ansar Financial and Development Corporation. These are the highlights of this corporation. Maximum offering we had in our prospectus was 15 million. We sold 14.6 in March 2010 dollar per share. Current portfolio is 15.5 million, and these shares are tax deductible for retirement plans and education and tax-free saving plan. They have these tax shelters available to Canadians. So we use that for our community's benefit. And this is listed, of course, that is trading as a symbol under the symbol of AFD. Core principle for this corporation, of course, it is operating on interest-free basis, and this corporation from based in it's in the articles of incorporation. It is prohibited from borrowing money on interest, and that's very important for any corporation. When you look at the incorporation documents, articles of incorporation, and if you see something that giving it's prohibited, so even the board cannot violate this, cannot borrow. It will be violating the law, prohibited from borrowing money on interest. Excuse me. And this has a Sharia ethics committee mandated in the corporation bylaws. So we have this special feature that under the corporate bylaw, we have this Sharia ethics committee to view and review and monitor whether this corporation, the board, is complying with the Sharia and as well as ethics. And I share with you when we submitted these bylaws for approval by the authorities, they asked, what is Sharia? obviously we knew that this word will raise some eyebrow. So when we added the ethics, so they love ethics, but they had some concerns. So we explained that the Sharia as it relates to finance, and they accepted it. So this is the little bit history of this Ansar Financial Development Corporation. Uh, we have other private corporations as well for different projects we are pursuing ethically, of course, and Islamically permitted businesses through Ansar Financial Group of companies, various Sharia concepts we use for different projects and different corporations, Musharaka, of course, Maraba, and Ijara leasing. They are all applied in our business operations. These are a few projects we did in Canada. Business, of course, business financing, joint ventures, car ownership plan, interest-free retirement saving plan, equipment leasing. We had some young dentist wanted to establish his practice, so we bought these equipments for his office and leased them. Land development. This is our major investment in different land development projects. We have done 4 different uh, projects, residential as well as commercial, industrial construction, and one very important project we have, is still in the process. It's a nursing home, healthcare facilities. As our community has grown, and we have a lot more seniors coming up in our population, Muslim population. So we need these kind of facilities which can run under the Islamic principles, and especially in the healthcare. 2 critical things, of course, for our community need. One is halal food, of course, and second, very important, is gender-based care. So if a grandfather is being cared, it has to be by male, and if it is grandmother, then it has to be a female taking care, giving bath, and things like that. And we educated to our government officials in Ministry of Health as to why these things are important for our facilities. So we have made 2 applications for our community to establish these nursing homes. These nursing homes in Ontario, they provide the funding for operation, but they want us to build the facility. So capital expense is our responsibility, but they provide operating cost for every resident in the nursing home. So this is a major goal we have in mind. Inshallah, we hope, if not, I can fulfill in my whole lifetime. Next generation, inshallah, will accomplish this for our community, which is very important service for our community. Now, to insurance. Of course, we all know that we need insurance when we buy a car, which is required by law. At least in Canada, I know, and I'm sure it's in many European and American America. Uh, so cars, of course, but for home, it is not mandatory, but this is the practice. So how do we buy insurance under the Islamic concept of takaful? So this is another project we embarked on, and I will share that. So the purpose of this is to create solidarity, peace of mind, and security by sharing risk for mutual protection of our assets and property against damage or loss within the framework of Sharia. As we know the history, that when caravans used to travel from different areas in Arabia, and some caravan, some material was looted. So if there was a loss, everybody in the caravan shared that loss. So no one person, if my camel was robbed, all the products were robbed from my camel, that doesn't mean that only I will suffer the loss, but everybody else will share with me. So that's the concept of takaful. Why is conventional insurance objectionable? Why we are concerned? Well, okay. First of all, is the premiums are invested in interest-free base. The objection is the premiums are invested in interest-based instruments. Of course, that's an objection from our point of view. And goal is profit maximization, not mutual assistance. I mean, these are the different objectives for big insurance corporations. They focus on maximizing their profit and give big bonuses to the executives rather than concept is to help and support for mutual assistance and well-being. And of course, especially in the life insurance, is the speculation, which is also objectionable from our point of view. Islamic concept, of course, is a cooperative or mutual insurance, a guarantee that is designed to help only policyholders. So this is for the benefit of all the policyholders and under the takaful concept. In Islamic insurance in takaful, all premiums are invested on interest-free basis and Sharia compliant basis. Of course, the investment and the projects or companies where their money is invested is on Sharia compliant basis, acceptable businesses, halal businesses. And this is a very important feature, and that's the any surplus left in the pool belongs to the shareholders, policyholders, not just the executives. There's a big difference. So if as a group we don't suffer much of a loss, then we get a refund or a rebate in our premium. So that's a very important concept of sharing any surplus among the policyholders. And the key elements, of course, based on solidarity, cooperative and common risk sharing of perils, joint ownership. This is also very important. So we have a control and pricing claims. So if we are sharing the management and sharing the risk, so we have the liberty to set the policies and pricing. Of course, Sharia compliant investment of premium and self-reliance and self-sustaining operations for community well-being. And that's the key concept. For members, shareholders, or policyholders, so community, so well-being, that's the major objective, not just to make money and maximize profit. You see big insurance companies, insurance and bank, they own most of the real estate, as you know, in many countries. So this is their objective to maximize the wealth for their shareholders and executives rather than to serve the community or the members. All premiums are, this is the concept, that all premiums are treated like a donation to the kafil uh, pool, and the policyholders, owners of the kafil company hire a manager, of course, and the managers in return receive wages. Uh, and after expenses, of course, any deficit or surplus belong to all policyholders to share. And when we set up this pilot project for our members, our community, we had to explain this to the regulators and also to a corporation, it's an insurance company, second largest insurance company in Canada, the cooperators, and we had to really explain the concept. And when we mentioned that our members, they come to us because of faith, so there won't be any exaggeration of claim, lying, and cheating. And they focus on that. They like that because there's so much insurance fraud going on. And when they hear something like that, they love that. And that's exactly what happened when we launched this program in 2008. Uh, it was a very small effort, and they see the result that our group has a very minimum ratio of loss because we don't have our policyholders lying or cheating or exaggerating their claims. So this is the key element for this particular project. So at the moment, through our Thakaful program, we are offering home and auto insurance, and this is only for our members. Because of certain constraints, we cannot offer to Muslim population in general. It's restricted to members only. And the reason for that is that in the under the Insurance Act in Canada, minimum 70% of premiums have to be invested in fixed term investment, bond debentures and things like that, which earn interest. And obviously, it is not acceptable to us. So the cooperators, the management, they have given us this flexibility that all our premiums are invested on equity rather than any. So this way, in total, they comply with this 70% requirement because when we advertise this, the regulators question the president of the cooperators and say, how do you comply that? And they say, look, our portfolio for this particular group is very small, and we have more than 70%, 30% in equity, so we are complying with that. So this is the crux of this concept that we comply. But because of this limit, we are not allowed to offer the Kafir program to general Muslim population. It's only members, to our members. It's a very selective group. Now I will talk about the housing co-op. As we know that we all need to buy a home for our family. How do we buy without interest? It's a big challenge for our community. So we established this Islamic Cooperative Housing Corporation in 1980. Uh, this provided both facilities to buy home on interest-free basis, and also if we have some saving, we can buy shares in the housing co-op. So if we don't put money in the checking account or saving account, which has an interest element in it. The model we adopted Musharaka Mutanaqisa, a decreasing partnership model, and it was selected because of its simplicity and practical nature for long-term transaction, as opposed to Morabiha. Morabiha is good for small, for short-term projects or short-term purchases, but houses, maybe 15, 10, 12, 20 years, it's just not possible. And we know very well that especially in North American environment, people don't live in the same house for too long for various reasons. I mean, job is one, you move to another city, another province, another state. So you have to sell this house and buy another one. Sometimes the family has grown, so they need a bigger house. Uh, and what is happening now in our community is that the children are grown, they have moved out, so the elder couple, they want to move down to a smaller house. So with this partnership model, there's no fixed term, so people can easily buy and sell without any penalty or not complying the requirement under Morabia fixed term contract. So this is essentially a partnership between the family and the community. The co-op is owned by the community, so this is just a partnership between the two. Partnership between Islamic financial institution and a prospective homeowner. The co-op is managed by a board of 7 volunteers. They are elected for 2 years, every 2 years. Now, this is the crux of our objective to facilitate our community members the opportunity to buy a house for their family without indulging in interest and with as much security, excuse me, and flexibility as possible within the taxation and legal framework of the corporation for the country. See, this is very important. We had to focus on the security and flexibility. People who invest money, they should have this flexibility that if they want to sell their shares, they can easily sell their shares and get their money back. And similarly, if they are investing or buying shares, this money has to be secured. So for that reason, all the houses which co-op buys are registered in the name of the co-op. So the co-op is the legal owner, and that gives security. And once they complete 100% shares, they surrender the share certificates, and the co-op transfers the title to the members at that point. So this is a continuation of the objective of the co-op to mobilize their saving pool and help, and of course, keep the funds flexible. They can transfer, sell their shares anytime with reasonable notice for larger amounts. Our policies, if somebody want to sell 50,000 up to 50,000 worth of shares, they can sell easily. For anything more, then we need little special a reasonable notice to make sure that we have enough funds to give the money back. And security, of course, and capital gain and loss we share. Of course, this is a concept of partnership that all partners they share the gain or loss. Type of membership. These are the various categories of members in the co-op. Home buyers, of course, those who want to buy home, and there are some members who purchased house before under the interest-based system, and now they realize and they want to get out of it. So we transfer their houses to co-op system and clear their mortgages. Simple investors, a lot of people they just want to, they have some saving, they want to invest money to help other members to buy homes, and of course those who already purchase home through the co-op system. And we have institutional investors, a lot of mosques, Islamic centers, and even private corporations. They have become member and they invest. So time to time they have cash surplus. They put money in the shares. They earn dividend, and when they need money, they take it out. And this is a very special category: the children. A lot of parents and now grandparents are making their children a member in the co-op. And it's a very simple process of becoming a member. They buy, they pay $75 membership fee to join. Once they become member, and they have to buy a minimum of 6 shares of $100 each. That's very basic requirement. So $50 a month saving. So even a day-old baby, we see some grandparents running to the office that I got a granddaughter, grandson born, and I want to make him or her member because it's so easy, $50 a month saving. Now, in order to buy a house through the co-op, they have to invest in the co-op shares for minimum of 20% of first 100,000 cost of the house, and 25% of next up to 100,000 cost, and 30% of over 200,000 cost. So in other words, we came up with this formula to bring equality for all members. So maximum co-op will contribute in any house is 225,000, and rest of the money has to be provided by the members themselves. This practice and this rule has been done going on very well, but lately for last 2-3 years what we are seeing in the North American market, house prices have gone 4 or 5 times in certain uh, cities, especially like in Toronto, Greater Toronto area, and in British Columbia, in Vancouver area, house prices are totally out of line. So for that reason, our board has to increase this limit in those cities. So there is some flexibility, and this is a system as an experiment, see how it goes. So we will monitor this situation where at the moment we have relaxed that limit because of this challenge. When our members buy a house, they pay proportionate rent, uh, and as they increase their ownership by buying more shares, their rent goes down in the same ratio. So that's the idea that they're required to increase their ownership over a period of time. So that way, their rental payment also reduced in the same ratio. So if somebody buys say 10% more shares on November 30th, so the rent which they pay on December 1st will be uh, less by 10%, reduced by 10%. And this encourages many of our members to buy as many shares as possible uh, so they can complete 100% ownership. So this is it's a mutual benefit in this system that people, when they buy more shares, they get immediate relief in their rent, and also it helps the co-op because with these additional funds coming to the co-op every month, co-op can buy more houses. So it's a mutual benefit for both parties. Now, legal ownership remains in the name of housing co-op till 100% shares are purchased by the member. This is just a form which our members fill and recalculate their monthly rent whenever they buy more shares. So they start with certain amount and then they buy more shares. Their contribution increases, co-op's contribution decreases, and on the same ratio, their rental payment also decreases. So when they complete 100% ownership, the house is transferred to them. Now, if and there are times when some members have to sell their house before they complete 100% ownership. As I mentioned, that they're moving to another city or town, or they need a bigger house or a smaller house, so they can sell that. So if at that time they sell their house and they own more than 50% shares, that the gain or loss is shared 10% by the co-op and 90% by the member. However, if their ownership at that time is 50% or less, then co-op share 20% of gain or loss and member shares 80%. Uh, and this, of course, is calculated on a net gain or net loss basis after any improvements, expenses, expansions, and legal expenses incurred by the member are deducted. So they share the net gain or net loss in this ratio. And from this total income, we share this as a dividend. We declare as a dividend. So our bylaws require that maximum 20% can be spent on the operating cost. 80%, minimum 80% has to be given as dividend to all the shareholders. And alhamdulillah, for last 10 years, it has been much less than for 15, 16% our expenses. So we are giving 85% as dividend to, to all the shareholders. The dividend is calculated on quarterly holding of shares from January 1st to March 31st and April 1st to June 30th and so on. So we calculate it on a quarterly holding basis, but we declare and pay once a year. So when, here is members are in driver's seat. They can complete 100% ownership in 10, 12 years, and whereas in conventional mortgage take 25 to 30 years. So it's up to the member how soon they want. The many members, they really say that they want to buy shares. They don't want to buy stereo or furniture. Don't spend more money on that, but buy more shares. because it's much more attractive to them and beneficial for them. So we launched this second co-op called Ansar Cooperative Housing Corporation in 2003. Uh, in this total status we've in 37 years, we have purchased over 880 houses, sold a little over $71 million worth of shares, and gave dividend between $3.60 per share or 3.6%, or and 10%. That was the highest 10% in early years, basically because of the inflation. At one time, the inflation rate was 6-7%. So the dividend rate was higher, although the actual dividend will be probably same. But anyway, for year 2019, we gave 3.6% dividend, and membership is over 4,800 in North America, and a lot of number members are in overseas. Many countries we have our members. We don't buy houses outside of Canada, but we have quite a few members in US as well, plus in some other countries. This is our web address, sansarhousing.com, if you need more information. And I will conclude my presentation. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free. This is our email address, acsc@ansarhousing.com. You can send your questions or anything you need to our address. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Anybody else?
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful presentation. And participants, if you have any question, you can raise your hand or you can type your question in the chat box so that we can answer you accordingly. Thank you so much. इंटरनेट क्यों नहीं चल रहा?
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
So, Brother Parvez Nassim, is Ansar Financial the only Islamic finance institution in Canada, or there are others?
Well, as far as institutions are concerned, we are the only one. But there are some other private corporations, other companies which are offering, they call Sharia compliant investment and also home purchase program. But as far as institution is concerned, that we are the only one.
No, this has become a problem in, it's not only in Islamic world, it's anywhere. I mean, the family-owned businesses. So, the founder builds his family-owned business, and when founder is gone, the problem arises. So I'm just asking, what structure is this corporation or company that you have? Is it a public limited company? It's in the stock exchange? I'm just curious to know.
Yes, of course, the Ansar Financial and Development Corporation, which is a business corporation, it is, of course, a public limited company which has shareholders, around 400 shareholders in that company, and it is listed. But the co-op is different. Islamic Cooperative Housing Corporation and Ansar Cooperative Housing Corporation, they are structured differently. They are as a co-op. And in the co-op concept, the policy holder, the members, they elect the board, and they are the shareholders, and they have they have one vote, irrespective of their investment. So somebody has $1 million investment, he has one vote, and somebody has $1,000 worth of shares, only one vote. So that's a different structure. Now, as far as stability of the institution is concerned, well, Housing Co-op, as I mentioned, we have 7 board members. They are all volunteers, and they are elected every 2 years by the shareholders. So, for the success and stability of any institution, I mean, there are some key stakeholders, the board members, who really carry the burden, as you know, in every organization. And it's just important that it should be just one person. It should be few. So in case something happens, for example, something happened to me, then some other people will just take over and continue with that, with the legacy. And that's the responsibility of all of us, all the shareholders and all members and all community members, to ensure that any institution or organization continue on the same principles.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
sir. There is a question by Babakar Jawo, and I am unmuting his mic. Brother Babakar, you can now unmute your mic and you can ask your question.
Brother Parvez Nassim, could you please stop sharing your screen, because I'll be the next person to talk. I cannot share my screen.
Um,
Yes, I must say that I really enjoyed your presentation. Yes, so hopefully I have just some few questions. That is number one, concerning the home buying.
sorry, I cannot hear
How?
your voice.
Well,
Oh,
just stop sharing your
do you hear
screen.
me? My screen is off.
Okay.
No, I'm asking Brother Parvez Nassim, because I'll be doing my presentation next.
I thought I did.
You did? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, do you hear me?
Just go ahead.
Okay, thank you. How are your home buying structured using an interest-free mortgage plan? That is question one. Question two, in a case where one has paid almost half of the amount and filed bankruptcy due to some unforeseen circumstances, how will you manage such circumstances under the mortgage plan?
Well, first of all, we don't have mortgage system. We don't register a mortgage on the title, because the title is registered or owned by the co-op itself. Now, if somebody has an issue in making their payments and continuing with the program, they have the option to sell this house and pay co-op shares, and take their own share, their own investment. So they can just terminate the partnership and get their money back. Now, there may be a situation where the house price is dropped, because that probably is your question, that if there is a loss, huge loss, then of course both parties suffer that loss, and 80% is suffered by the member and 20% is suffered by the co-op. So based on this ratio, they will get both partners will get their money back. Just one thing I would like, there are a couple of questions I just wanted to answer, but it's gone now. It's also members. You can have members in Pakistan as well, and they have quite a few. You can do that, but of course we don't buy houses outside of Canada, and we have a lot of members in US as investors, as shareholders, as members, but we do not buy houses in US. because of course, the legal requirements, legal constraints on us as a co-op. Any other question?
Assalamu alaikum.
Sir, there is a question in chat box also that are there any tax implementation for investment from USA in the cooperative? So kindly
Yeah.
answer.
Yes, of course. Good question. When we declare dividend, all our shareholders or members, they have to declare their income, dividend income, when they file their tax return in their. uh, Now, when we give out dividend, we have to deduct 15% withholding tax from this dividend and give it to the federal government, and they can file the tax return, and if their income is much less, they get that money refunded. There is one difference because we have quite a few members in certain countries where they don't have tax treaty with Canada. Uh, for example, Saudi Arabia, if they don't have any tax system, so they don't have tax treaty. So for these countries, non-treaty countries, we call them, we have to deduct 25% of the dividend income and send it to the to federal government in Canada. But if they are treaty countries, for example, in Pakistan and Malaysia, UAE, then we are required to deduct only 15%, and they have to in their respective country, and they get this tax credit. So if they have paid tax, for example, in US, so they get the credit for the tax they paid in Canada because of the tax treaty. Any other question?
Thank you so much, sir. There was a question that can we avail all this housing scheme you have explained here in Pakistan?
Well, I mean, any community can replicate this model, and we have helped in US two organizations in St. Louis, Missouri, and also in California, in San Francisco. So yeah, this can be copied, and in Malaysia, they are working on it to replicate this model. Even in Riyadh, some group is working on it. And UK, two different organizations worked on it. So there are attempts being made to replicate this model. So yes, it can be done. I mean, we are willing to help anything we need. We can provide any technical help, but we cannot operate outside of Canada.
Thank you, sir. I guess all the questions have been answered by our side. Participants, if you still want to ask something, you can raise your hand or you can ask in the chat box. Otherwise, we will continue with our session further. Thank you so much. Sir, I guess there is no more question. So I would like to thank you for all the wonderful information you have shared regarding all this housing scheme and how Islamic finance and banking can help. Move on to our next speaker, Professor Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hassan. So let me introduce our next speaker that Dr. Muhammad Kabir Hassan currently holds three endured chairs: Herbarian Professor of Economics and Finance, Hancock Whitney Chair Professor in Business, and Bank One Professor in Business in the University of New Orleans. Professor Hassan is the winner of 2016 Islamic Development Bank IDB Prize in Islamic Banking and Finance. Professor Hassan received his BA in Economics and Mathematics from Gustavus Adolphus College, Minnesota, USA, and MA in Economics and PhD in Finance from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, USA, respectively. Professor Hassan is a financial economist with consultant research and teaching experiences in development finance, money and capital markets, Islamic finance, corporate finance, investments, monetary economics, macroeconomics, Islamic banking and finance, and international trade finance. Thank you so much. Mr. Kabir Hassan, you can now continue with your presentation and provide us some useful information regarding your topic. Thank you so much.
Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Your voice is audible. Thank you.
Okay. Um, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Well, thank you, Brother Parvez Nassim. Actually, he has laid down the foundation, and that's going to be helpful to my presentation. So I do not have to repeat a number of things, the different types of Islamic financial contract, and some of these contracts that are being currently used in Canada, Canada being our neighbor. So there are a lot of commonalities, but I believe the Canadian environment is more or better situated than the environment we live in the United States. So my talk is going to be uh, structured this way. I'm not going to focus on Canada. Originally, I made also some slides on Canada, but I'm not going to focus on this because Brother Parviz Nassim has done a wonderful job. So when you talk about North America, there are only two countries here. Well, in a sense, you can also talk Mexico as well, but we basically mean US and Canada. There are a lot of affluent, wealthy people live in this country. There are different types of varied infrastructure. And in terms of wealth, the Muslims are one of the top wealthy or income earning group in the United States. Even though I'll show you some number, these numbers that are published from published sources really undermine the real number of Muslim people living in the United States. If you go to any community, you'll find this community is full of doctors, engineers, professors, and they're doing very well. Now, Islamic finance has been instead North America in two ways. To the development of retail finance sector like home financing, interest-free financial activities. As an example, Brother Parvez Nassim has given in the context of Canada, and the majority is coming really through investment, private equity, because different wealthy individuals based outside the United States, especially in Gulf countries, invest in the United States through private equity investing in different financial activities. Now, the majority of the people live, the Muslims live in the big cities, for example, New York, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Detroit, Houston, Minneapolis, St. Louis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Atlanta, Washington, D.C. And if you see, the growth of the Islamic finance is also concentrated in these big cities. Now, Pew Center has done a survey. It's a little bit old. They say about 4 million people are Muslims and about 2 plus million are adults. But there are others, not formal, official way of survey shows that Islam Muslim population in the United States is 10 plus million people. So what is the little history of Islamic finance in the USA? So it began its journey during the 1980s by the establishment of two Islamic financial institutions. In 1984, an investment pool was formed by some Muslims within themselves with the objective of creating a Sharia-compliant investment product. The first Islamic institution is Amana Funds, started its operation in 1987 as a mutual funds company in the state of Washington, and its name is Sachuna Capital Corporation. The development of Islamic wholesale industry in the United States started between 1980s and 1990s when some financial institutions focused on creating investment opportunities for Middle Eastern investors in the USA. Previously, our capital was known as First Islamic Investment Bank, operating as a private equity and venture capital in Atlanta in 1998, and it was rebranded as Our Capita in 2005, and currently is one of the largest Islamic wholesale company in the United States. In the 1990s, the second institution, American finance house Lariba, and one of our panel speaker, Yahya Abdul Rahman, doctor, he's to talk about this, his institution more detail, and also Lariba financing philosophy. It focused on financing small business and home financing by offering retail investment products that comply with Sharia rules. In mid-90s, United Bank of Kuwait requested letter to the Office of the Comptroller of Currency for two of its home financing products, and acceptance of OCC of these products marked a significant advancement for Islamic finance industry or retail industry Islamic mortgage financing in the USA. In 1996, launch of 5 lakh advisors provided Islamic finance industry some form of measure to compare different funds across the globe with its annual guide to Islamic funds. However, there are lack of broader market indices to screen for Sharia compliance, and that was fulfilled in 1999 with the introduction of Dow Jones Islamic Index. And later half of 1990s, you also saw a proliferation of wholesale Islamic finance in the USA. And the growth is focused on establishing investment opportunities for the Middle Eastern investors in domestic real estate market. If you see the wealthy GCC Gulf Muslims are investing huge amount of money not only in the USA, Canada, and all over the entire Europe, but not so much in the poor Muslim countries. In 2000, in Freddie Mac 2001 bought Islamic mortgage from Lariba. It's the first type of securitization. You know, the securitization very big in the USA. So that was the first instance of Islamic mortgage securitization. The entry of Freddie Mac and Fannie Mac provided immense source of liquidity into the Islamic financing home market. In 2002, the Sharia compliant division of HSBC Bank called Amana started offering Islamic home financial products in New York. And during 2002, Guidance Financial implemented Mosharaka model to offer Islamic home financial products in suburbs of Maryland, Virginia, and Washington. I believe the same format is also used by Lariba. In Michigan, Islamic finance industry grew rapidly when university banks started offering home financial products in 2003, and both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac also in 2003 started buying Ijara products and became the sole investor in Islamic mortgage products in the USA. In 2007, University Bank began a banking subsidiary to comply with Sharia principles called University Islamic Finance Corporation. And Islamic home financing products are offered in the financial hub of Chicago after Devon Bank started offering Sharia compliant home financing opportunities in 2008. Interestingly, Devon Bank is owned by a Jewish person, but he was attracted, of course, for the market as well as the principle of Islamic finance. And you know, this concept of riba is very much present in all three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, where it has been prohibited. Now, when you look at the regulation, United States and Canada, and I'm not going to focus much on Canada, but just to give you, in the United States, we have the excessive fragmentation of regulatory supervision. So the banking institution or financial institution not only regulated by the federal charter, also is externally regulated by the different states. So you have the federal FDIC, you have the Federal Reserve, also you have the state um, banking authority, which also regulates banks. We have about 5,000 plus banks in the United States. But if you compare this with Canada, Canada has only 11 or 12 banks. Of course, it has a much less population, and the regulatory agencies maintain a cooperative relationship with different Canadian securities administrators. So in Canada, it's not as segmented as in the United States. Now, focusing more on the United States regulation, pioneering advancement towards the development of regulatory acceptance for Islamic finance began in 1990s. It started with 1997, as I said before. UKB applied to the Office of Comptroller of Currency to get permission to offer Ijara-based sukuk. In the mortgage contract, the customer, not UBK, is responsible for locating the property that the customer is willing to buy, and the customer is also responsible for negotiating the terms of the residential real estate purchase with the seller, and UBK will neither serve as a broker nor maintain an inventory of the properties. And UBK, United Bank of Kuwait, introduced a net lease, a monthly lease program in which the lessee is liable to pay in order to get access to the property. And this monthly lease cover profit, but interest in the bracket I say, because when you submit all the documents, you have to use the word interest as well as the principal payments. Now, there has been a debate in the United States about the Islamic finance mortgage product, whether it's a really an operating lease or financial lease. And if you do a microcosm analysis, you'll find most of these Islamic mortgage products are not really operating lease, and that will be more Sharia compliant. They are more like financial lease. Uh, so at the end of the lease term, the lessee will become the owner of the property. The purchase agreement has a provision for the lessee to become the owner of the property before the expiration of the lease term, prepaying the entirety of the purchase price at the earlier date. In the US, the regulatory oversight of financial industry is fragmented between state and federal authorities, and this creates barriers to entry for foreign banks with centralized regulatory system. So if a bank from Pakistan wants to start operation in the United States, they will face this structure which they are not really familiar with. It also creates a challenge for the Islamic finance industry to expand operation in all states. And the regulators do not differentiate between conventional Islamic banks in their governance process of financial services activities, because if you want to do business in this country, you have to do business with the existing secular banking principle. So that creates a tension between if you want to do an Islamic finance in the USA and so on. So if you look at the interpretive letter from the Office of the Control of the Currency, so the ownership of the property, ownership of the residential real estate by the UBK, actually they do keep the title, but technically the ownership really belongs to the, because you're selling something in the, even in Ijara, sorry, you are selling the used product of the house that you are purchasing with the buyer, but there is a 80-20 or whatever the ratio. The down payment, if the borrower pay down payment 20% in, and the UBK or the financial institution paid 80%. So there's a partnership, and this in the partnership, the way this structured, and Brother Parvin explained it very well. So they have a used product rental, and the rental will be shared 80-20%. And also at the same time, the borrower is going to pay down the principal amount in each payment. So that's why there's an annuity payment. And but at the end of this payment, at the end of this lease contract, so all these principal will be repaid, and there will be separate contract, and this contract will be transferred, or the house will be ownership, or the deed will be transferred to the borrower. So ownership of the property, property maintenance, UBIC's role in maintaining the real estate property is minimum. It is the headache of the lessee financing, and they are only providing the financing, transfer the owner at the end of the lease, default risk, measure UBK is taking in the case of default. And actually the way this contract is structured, the bank is really taking very little or no risk, and they are using LIBOR to do the financing, what rate they are going to charge to the borrower. So US regulatory guidelines demonstrate that agencies focus on the economic outcome from a transaction. So the regulators are quite flexible and are willing to accommodate banking activities for foreign banks. However, such activities must create similar economic outcomes as the activities used by domestic banks. For example, in a traditional conventional mortgage product, the bank is giving you the money, but in an Islamic mortgage, the bank has to buy the house that you are purchasing. So this buying and selling. So each time you buy and sell, so the double taxation. So these those who are doing Islamic mortgage in the United States, they have been able to convince the regulators, look, these are functionally equivalent to a conventional mortgage. We are doing buying and selling on both sides because we want to comply with the Sharia rule. As long as these are functionally equivalent. That's why, this is also criticism that the Islamic finance products has become a mimicking industry, or is sort of camouflage. We are doing a conventional, we are wrapping Sharia around it. So that criticism is there, but I'm not saying that they are violating the Sharia, but they, in order to follow the Sharia rule, in order to create this financial document, Islamic mortgage product, they have to have a buy and sell, and each time you buy and sell, you pay tax, double taxation, and that makes it an Islamic financial product more expensive. But the Islamic finance industry has been able to convince the regulators in this country that these are functional equivalents, so they do not have to pay double taxation. So regulatory concern here, Islamic institutions operating in US financial markets are mostly leasing companies and mortgage brokers because of fewer regulatory oversight. Hence, US provides fewer opportunities for Muslim members looking for Islamic banks. So I'm talking with the retail bank in the United States is still not feasible under the existing regulation unless the regulators come up with make some flexibility. Now, this creates a controversy among Sharia scholars residing in the jurisdiction, the Sharia compliance of products. And sorry, US agencies have no regulatory power in the institution in the financial services industry, and this creates a concern for banks offering murabaha because these financial companies do not own the properties, and there is no Sharia governance standard, not a framework for the uniform application across US Islamic finance industry. So if you look at, there are different Islamic finance providers in the United States, and there, if you examine their mortgage product, they're structured in a different way. Some of them structured in a Mosharaka way, some of them structured in a Murabaha way. So there are different ways, and there are also the Sharia is concerned about these things. But Alhamdulillah, it is moving to a convergence, and the Sharia scholars are working together to make it more Islamically compliant. Now, there are different types: ijara, murabaha, by bitmal ajil, mudaraba, istisna, musharaka. So there are different contracts that are used for different types of product. As I told you, when I'm just giving you so far the Islamic retail industry, where the mortgage of different types, home mortgage, car mortgage, are very big. Unlike in Canada, I don't think that we do have, to the best of my knowledge, Islamic um, insurance product, and there is a need for Islamic insurance product as well. So I'm not going to talk about Ijara. You're familiar with the Ijara contract. I explained in my previous slide as well. Morabaha, same story. So, but I just want to mention one thing. The OAC addressed the regulation of Morabaha in 1999. According to the OCC, Murabaha contracts can be used to finance construction, commercial inventory, acquisition of commercial equipment. A strength of the Murabaha contract is the customer can exercise tax deduction over the cost base of the property as interest for tax purposes. For a financier, this contract is beneficial because the returns are reliable and short-term. A weakness is that many Muslims are unable to distinguish Murabaha contracts from a conventional loan money secured by a note and a mortgage. So that's the controversy still is lingering. And Musharaka, as I said, it's a partnership of a contract. Musharaka Sharia compliant equity contract, the parties participate in the contract, contribute capital or anything in kind to establish a partnership to engage in a Sharia compliant activity with the view of making a profit. And a profit sharing ratio is pre-agreed between the parties and losses borne by the parties according to the capital contributed. To provide home financing, the Lariba American Finance House uses declining participation in usufruct or declining musharaka and rent, which is widely known in the world as musharaka mutankisa, which is translated in English as diminishing partnership. And this is a hybrid Islamic finance concept, where the concept of lease is combined with musharaka, in which the financial institution and customer jointly buys the home and then lease it to generate profit. In this arrangement, the customer undertakes to purchase the share of the financial institution, the property jointly owned periodically until the share of the financial institution's property becomes zero. And at this point, the relationship between the parties based on the principle of Mudaraba. Now, what are some of the institutions? And I know brother Yahya talk about his company Lariba. The institution Devon Bank, as I mentioned before, University Bank, American House Riba, Islamic Massachusetts United, Shape Finance, Amal Finance, AlHuda, UIB Capital, etc. Number of institutions 25 so far in the USA, Devon Bank, Ajat Funds, University Bank, Lariba, etc. So let's go over these things so that you have an idea. If you ever are interested in living in the United States, you want to get a Islamic financial product, this is where you go. In Devon Bank, 2003, it was established in Chicago. It offered residential Morabaha product both in as well as outside Illinois since 2008. In addition to Morabaha, Devon Bank offers Ijara home and business financing. One of its notable out-of-state deal was providing Ijara wa Iktina financing to California Muslim Community Center in San Diego. It also provides construction financing in some states. It sells its financing of residential purchase to Freddie Mac, same way Lariba does. And this agreement provides additional liquidity to the bank so that it can offer financing options. And Devon Bank is planning to expand its operation overseas to raise capital from outside the USA in order to provide Musharaka home financing products in the USA. University Bank of Ann Arbor started its operation in 2003. Similar to Devon Bank, University Bank also offers Murabaha as well as Islamic financing products. But however, unlike Devon Bank, University Bank has Islamic finance subsidiary. Univers University Bank is the first and the only bank in the US that offers Sharia compliant deposit product. So, you know, in the United States banking law, according to banking law, what is a bank? A bank is an institution which accepts deposits and makes loans. So it has to have two angles or two sides in order to be bank. So many of these institutions here, because of the law, they operate as a non-banking financial institution. They accept one side, not the other side. So this product was developed by Sheikh Financial Abdul Qadir Thomas. He is a famous Muslim converted jurist in the United States, and he has done a lot for the development of this industry in the USA. Now, the deposit product pays the depositor returns based on the underlying portfolio company. Some other institutions like Ford Taylor Bank, American State Bank, Dorothy Bank, Ford Taylor Bank, California Bank also offer financial services that are Sharia compliant, although they do not advertise themselves as Sharia compliant finance providers. In 2013,
Participants, maybe the speaker got disconnected due to some internet issues at his end. So kindly wait for a few minutes. He'll joining us soon. Thank
do
you.
you see me? I'm back. I think what happened?
Yes, sir. Basically the session is of Kabir Hassan for now, and you will be our next speaker. So we are just waiting for him to finish his presentation. Then we will allow you to share your screen and share your presentation. Thank you.
I'm back again.
Yes, sir. You can continue your presentation.
Okay. Um, so I'm almost done towards the end. So I was talking about different types of financial institution that we have in the United States. Okay. So if you see, these are the names. They do Islamic finance, but not in the name of Islamic finance. Like something also Parvez Nassim has alluded to. Whenever you use the ethical finance, the regulators or the people accept it better than, because Islam name itself has some allergy still to certain segment in this country. Now, non-banking Islamic financial institution in the United States, you have the Guidance Residential, one of the largest one. Actually, it has 5 billion in home financing, finance over 20,000 properties based in Washington, D.C. Offers diminishing musharaka as it is a non-banking financial institution and faces no restriction to enter equity investment. Its a client and Guidance becomes co-owners of the home. Then you have Lariva, started in 1987, Pasadena, California. Location started. The oldest owned Sharia compliant Islamic financial institution in the USA. It also offers a diminishing musharaka and rent for home financing, auto financing, food franchises, and finance dialysis centers and medical clinics. At its major investors are Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae 2001 and 2002. And Islamic mutual funds, as I mentioned, Amana Mutual Fund, the largest mutual fund institution called Amana, is a broker section of Securna Capital Corporation. It is established in Bellingham, Washington. It has invested 98% of their assets in mutual funds which are Sharia compliant. And there are actually three types of Amana funds. You have the growth funds, you have the income fund, and also they have introduced they call developing world fund. And Amana Funds has been the most successful mutual funds in the United States, and myself invest in Amana Mutual Fund. Now, one of the competitor of Amana Mutual Fund is Ajat Funds, and Ajat Ethical Funds has 99.9 million, or almost 100 million in total assets according to last morning's report. And the fund is focused on long-term capital appreciation, and other prominent mutual funds in the USA include Allied Asset Advisors. It is owned by North American Investment Trust, which operated Iman Fund. As of April 2020, Iman K Funds has 115.3 million in total assets according to Morningstar. And the fund focuses on corporations with greater than average earnings growth. Private equity and venture capital, this is huge, and private equity numbers are not really that we all know, because this is a private deal between the investors and the who are using their funds. And the two larger institutions are UIB Capital and R Capita. Both are subsidiaries of GCC based Islamic financial corporations. UIB Capital primarily focuses on private equity sector with a special interest in mid-market corporations. It invests in oil and gas, healthcare, consumer products, technology, business and consumer services industries. And UIB Capital focuses on investing in smaller companies with high growth potential. Typically, the size of equity investment ranges between 10 to 75 million. And R Capital is the largest Islamic wholesale company in the USA. It began its operation at First Islamic Investment Bank in Atlanta in 1998 and was rebranded as R Capital in 2005. As of the last figure that we have, it has completed over 80 transactions worth more than 30 billion in the USA, Middle East, Asia, Europe. And R Capital focus on real estate investment, corporate investment, venture capital, and asset-based investment. The real estate business focuses on self-storage, warehouses, retail, healthcare, residential, assisted living facilities. And the corporate investment focus on energy, healthcare, manufacturing, and technology industry in the US and abroad. The venture capital arena focuses on information technology, healthcare, and industrial technology industries in the US. And asset-based investment focus particularly on industries with largest asset requirements. And there's also another one called Innovest Capital, is a fully owned subsidiary Gulf investment house. Since 2004, Innovest Capital has invested more than 130 million in North American housing market. It is based in Cleveland and focuses on real estate development and acquisition. And you have Transocean Group Limited, focuses on private equity. The primary purpose of the establishment is to create investment opportunities for Gulf-based investors in the US market. And my final slide. So what is the future lies? I see the future is very bright, and we recently just had an election. Hopefully a new president will take over soon, and things will be better. All this Islam bashing, Muslim bashing that you have seen for the last 4 years will come to not to an end, but it will slow down, and we'll have more opportunities. And there are more and more Muslim peoples are engaged into political life. So because you cannot really change things unless you become members of the parliament, Congress, and Senate, and it is happening, and they will be able to put forward legislation, regulation that will help allow the industry to grow. But from our perspective, we need to have this Sharia, newly branded Sharia scholars who understand Sharia and the modus operandi of Islamic finance. Right now, we have a dichotomy between these two, but inshallah, I know many younger generation are learning Sharia as well as Islamic finance, um, and they are either self-teaching or going to school. So new product development will come out, and they will be able to come up with the products that will cater to different sectors, SME financing, the young population who wants to start a startup, and so on. Hopefully there will be sukuk in this country and more mutual fund. We have to create the awareness of the benefits of products as takaful. Takaful is another need, and other Islamic finance capital market. And we also have to establish the comprehensive framework legislation to help, to grow this industry. Right now, I would say, before we go to the regulators, we really need to get together all the Islamic finance stakeholders in this country, in the United States, and they try to draft different types of legislative, uh, I would say that, a working paper, so that they can really push this to the regulators to help grow the industry. So that is all I want to say. I thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have any question, I'll be able to entertain this question and try my best to answer it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for sharing insightful information. Participants, you may raise your hand if you want to ask any question, or you can also write your questions in the chat box. Sir, I guess there is no question. You explained the things very well. Sir, there's a question in the chat box that is there any criteria for investor to invest in mutual funds in US?
No, there is no criteria. You just simply invest your money. And Islamic finance is not only for Muslim, it's for anyone who wants to invest into this product. So no criteria. I mean, if you reside outside the United States, you have to go through your regulation of the respective country, whether it allows you to invest in the United States. That is a different story, but you can whether you can do it directly, that part I do not know. But if you reside in the United States, there is no restriction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering the question. Participants, you can still raise your hand if you want to ask something, or else we will proceed with our session. Sir, there's a question that what is the market size of Islamic finance in US and how much it constitute compared to the global IF assets?
There is no authoritative study what is the market size, but if you take 10 million people, I know the more and more people are getting into Islamic form, like they're taking Islamic mortgage and so on. So there is no definitive number I can give you. And if I give you something, that will not be right. And you see, the problem is that those who started the pioneers, like we have Yahya Abdul Rahman here, Parvez Nasim, these are the people, Abdul Qadir Thomas, and there is also, I forgot the name from the guy from Guardians. So they have started this industry. I would really ask them to do a survey to see how big is the industry, sort of doing a feasibility study, from the demand side and supply side. And I hope they will take this thing for the growth of the industry as well. But
Thank Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering the question. I hope things are clear to the participants. And if you still have, sir, there's a question that what's the most important point to convince non Muslims about Islamic finance?
You have to tell them, first of all, this contract is better than the other contract. It's not really one of the problem that I face, those who live in the United States, when I say Islamic mortgage, do I have to be a Muslim? The answer is no, you don't have to be a Muslim. And I'm sure Brother Abdul Rahman is going to explain this thing. Second thing, you tell them sit down and explain the contract, and they will look at the beauty of this contract and they will accept, and they will see that it is really functionally equivalent to a conventional mortgage, but in a Sharia way. Now, again, there is a point there because of this, there are different lags and you have to comply with regulation. Islamic mortgage turns out a little more expensive than a conventional mortgage. So many people ask me advice what they should do. So this Islamic mortgage, the rate could be 50 to 100 basis point more than conventional one. The first thing, the answer that I gave. So, if you want to buy a regular cloth shirt or a brand name, the brand name will more. But second answer that I gave, this is what I follow. Buying conventional mortgage with the intention that I will pay it back very quickly. Every house that I bought, I paid off in 5 years. And another thing, but many people cannot really do this. It depends on the income potential and so on. So if you are conflicted, what you should do, you should go with an Islamic mortgage. At least it is fulfilling the Sharia requirement. It may be a little more expensive, but it will reward you for that.
Thank you, sir. There is another question that is Islamic microfinances more successful in USA than in Muslim countries?
Actually, there is no Islamic microfinance here. You have a wrong idea. I mean, of course, Muhammad Idris started. We have this concept called cooperative. Cooperative has been there for centuries. It's many other countries, and they do everything on the basis of riba. I mean, there is no like communities like it's like Minneapolis, for example. There's a lot of Somali or community there. They do their private transaction in a cooperative way, maybe in Islamic way, but this is not a formal platform. So there is no Islamic finance, microfinance in this country. You have a wrong idea, brother. In the United States, there are 37 states have enacted state-wise legislation that any reference to the Sharia will not be condoned. But it has not got all the way to the Supreme Court because it's not going to stand because of the religious freedom and the protection of your religious faith. So still, we have a long way to go to explain to our Muslim, even Muslims, we have to really explain our Muslim brothers too. And then we have to explain this thing to the wider non-Muslim population. Look, we are not really threat to you. We are a peaceful religion. Whatever happened outside the United States, that is also carrying a bad name to us. But one thing I can tell you, if you want to just follow your religion, ritual, 5 times a prayer, going to the masajid, nobody is going to ask you a question. But as soon as you get into the other the social life, economic life, political life, and they will stand against you. But this is where the bigger Islam is, right? The essence of Islam, because you want to change things for the betterment, not only for Muslims, but for the entire humanity. So that's why we have to do a lot of dawah work. And mashallah, there are a lot of young da'i who are well versed in Quran and Sunnah, speaks local tongue. They're coming forward, they're making Islam understandable to the Christian and non-Muslim communities in the world. And that work is continuing. And it will keep growing, and it will keep I pray to Allah that it will get better and better as days go by.
Thank you, sir, for explaining this thing so well. And no doubt there are more perspectives of religion, and we just only concentrate on few ones. So there is another question, that is there any Sharia body to audit the financial activities of Islamic financing firms in US?
I think each institution should have a Sharia board. I'm not sure, and Brother Abdul Rahman probably can tell guidance. I think they do, and they're supposed to look after whether they're following the Sharia principles and guidelines. But there is no, because this is operating subpar, okay? So this is in an informal way, Islamic finance. So the US established regulation does not come under any of the regulation. They are not following that one. But when it comes to contractual thing, of course, they have to fulfill all the regulatory requirement. In short, to the best of my knowledge, every financial institution, big one, do have a Sharia board, and they take advice from the Sharia board in whenever they come up with a new product. But not the way that you are used to know in Pakistan, Bangladesh, or African countries. And I also see another question here. Sharia body to audit. Of course, as I answered this question, there is also another question. Face with challenge of double taxation. So double taxation is gone in this country. So the regulators allow, because they consider an Islamic mortgage is equivalent to a conventional mortgage, and that's why the double taxation is discontinued. So it has become more competitive with conventional mortgage. But before we are able to convince, in order to make or enact or structure an Islamic mortgage, you have to have a buying and selling, and every time you buy and sell, you have to pay tax, and that part is gone. And finally, there's a question: how can you adapt Islamic microfinance to Latin American culture? You see, this entire concept of Islamic cooperatives existed in many countries. Even Professor Muhammad Yunus, he has made it operational in Bangladesh, but the concept really came from other countries as well. So Islamic microfinance is based on concept of mutuality, and you can easily do it in Latin America or America, but you have to really, because riba or the concept of interest is so much into part of their culture, that's why you will have the biggest stumbling block. Tell them, understand that this is something bad. We can do it in a better way. So that education purpose or advocacy or awareness is the first thing. I call this dawa, to make them understand the Islamic financial product, to tell them the the bad things about riba and what it does. It makes poorer and poorer, it makes richer and richer, it creates inequity in the system. And a partnership type of financing which is based on no riba is better, and it is in your religion. So if you can do these activities, and they will be more amenable to whatever form of Islamic product you want to introduce, whether it's an Islamic microfinance, Islamic bank, Islamic mutual fund, Waqf. Even this Waqf concept has been, this Oxford University is based on the concept of Waqf, Harvard University is based on Waqf. Those concepts they are using. So we have to connect with them some way. All the bad things, Islam or Muslim comes on the press, only something bad happens to us. But we are doing a lot of good things in this country. Even this latest the coronavirus that was invented by two Muslim couple of Turkish origin, and you never hear about these things in the press. We have to also be good, and also to let the people know that we are good for dawah purposes. We cannot be shy away. We have to tell that we are really contributing to this country.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for explaining the things so well. So now our other speaker has some emergency and he have to go for further for some further commitments. So rest of the questions will be taken, I guess, at the end from your side, so that we can continue with his presentation. Thank you so much for explaining the things, and thank you so much for answering all the questions. I hope you will stay with us for a few more time so that you can answer the few questions if anyone have any other question from your side. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, I will.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Yahya, I have made you the co-host so that you can share your presentation. And for a while, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Yahya Abdurrahman, that he Dr. Yahya Abdurrahman was in 1968 during a period when the Islamic infrastructure of the US was in its nascent stage that Dr. Yahya Khairi Abdurrahman came to the United States from Cairo, Egypt, while he would later go on to be a key figure in the building of emerging Muslim community in the US. Upon his arrival here, he set about to complete his education, subsequently earning both a doctorate and to chemical engineering from the University of Wisconsin and a master's degree in International Management and Finance from the University of Texas, Dallas. Over the last few decades, Dr. Yahya has led a distinguished career in the world of banking and finance. This includes having been a member of the founding board of directors of a U.S. bank in Houston, Texas, and chairperson of Resource International Corporation, also in Houston. In 1987, he founded American finance house Laribia in Pasadena, California. Now, I would like Dr. Yahya to continue with his presentation and provide some useful information. Sir, kindly unmute your mic. We are unable to hear you. Sir, your voice is inaudible.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now your voice is audible.
Very
Thank
good.
you, sir.
Can you see the slide or you cannot?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. They are visible.
Okay, I just want to make it in a presentation form and then I'll be with you in a second.
Okay, sir.
Um,
So press the F5 key on your keyboard.
say again, I'm trying to make it in a presentation format and you're,
Sir, click the F5 button on your keyboard. It will be displayed in a presentation form.
I'm okay.
Okay, sir.
I'm okay. Are you on now? Are we on? Everything is okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It gives me a great pleasure to be with you at AlHuda. And Jum'ah Mubarakah to you. May Allah bless you in this wonderful Jum'ah day. And I wish you the best, inshallah. It gives me a great pleasure to share with you our experiences over the past 33 years. We started in 1987, and this is a slide presentation. Please watch it carefully. I'll try to go slowly, then you can read as much as you can. You have my email addresses, and I'll be delighted to answer any questions you might have. The agenda is to give you a history of the evolution of what we call RF banking. R stands for riba and F is free. And actually, we have tried our best to popularize this word riba free in the United States for the past 18 years. And now we are almost 20 years in it, and it's become a household name, not only for the Muslim community, but in the American general media. And that makes us very happy and thankful to Allah for it. I'd like to share with you the vision and the mission, our vision and our mission, our target markets, our finance models, our business model and experience, and the challenges and our roadmap for the future. We started in 1987 as a finance company, and we started with a very humble capital. We're the only institution owned 100% by the American Muslim community. Other institutions are owned by other people of other faith and background, and we thank them for their contributions. But we are the only institution owned by the American Muslim community. Not only that, but we're the only institution which has a full service national bank, which offers checking accounts, certificate of deposits accounts, investment accounts, savings accounts on the deposit side, and also offers full service financing service in all 50 states. We're the only institution that does that in the United States. We use the same core processor of Bank of America. So whatever you get from Bank of America or Chase or Citi on online banking, we offer it. Whatever you offer, they offer in apps, on your cell phone. We also offer it. And alhamdulillah, very sophisticated. And 75% of our depositors are from the non-Muslim communities. So we serve all people of all faith in America. And our staff is a diversified staff from all national and international backgrounds and from all faith. And we pride ourselves in using riba-free financing with an added value to serve all people as a discipline. We use it as a discipline. And alhamdulillah, we have been at it for 33 years. And so far, so good by the blessings of Allah. The next slide has to do with our goal. The first goal is to develop a superior discipline. That superior discipline is actually a discipline that is focused on developing the community economically. And we call that the RF discipline. And we don't offer it just because it is Islamic, which is very important, but we offer it with an important question in mind. If a non-Muslim comes to me and tells me, why am I going to do this? Of course, I can tell him that because this is the order of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but I have to add something, and that is called the added value. And we have a definite added value in a very unique model that is only unique to what we do, and that's called Bay'ul Istithna, the sale with the exception of use of raqq, and I'll talk to you about it later on. The second objective is to prepare a new generation of what we call the preferred bankers in the community, the choicest of all bankers, and that is the RF banker. The RF banker, the riba-free banker, who is actually serving the community using the discipline of riba-free. And then finally, and most importantly, is to put the foundation of defining value and the guidelines for what we call the riba-free central bank. Because without a riba-free central bank, what we're doing is just an application. We want to really get to the core of creating money, creating liquidity in the community, and doing it in a riba-free way. These are the three objectives of what we want to do. Now, the most important thing that motivates us to do this is the story from the Quran of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. When Sayyidina Yusuf was to be rewarded by the Pharaoh, he asked, what do you want to be? He said, as the Quran says in Surah Yusuf, Ij'alni ala khaza'in al-ard. Make me the custodian of the House of Treasury. In today's lingo, make me the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board or the chairman of the Central Bank of Egypt. And that's what we want. We want to create a new generation of Muslims who are the preferred and choicest of all bankers in America, and I hope in the world. So when people are looking for an honorable, sincere, devout, good family person who cares about protecting the assets and the deposits of people, they say, go to the Muslim banker. So that is the reputation. That is the whole idea, in my humble opinion, of what we call RF banking and RF finance. So it is a movement to achieve a riba-free lifestyle. We want to share with people a lifestyle, which we call a riba-free lifestyle, which focuses on who you are, not what car you drive, how expensive a home you live in, how much looks you have by having an expensive watch, an expensive designer jean, and so on and so forth. It's a system which focuses on the individual, on the contribution. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْظُرُ إِلَى صُوَرِكُمْ وَأَجْسَامِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. The Prophet ﷺ teaches that Allah does not look at the way you look at the way your face looks, at the way your body looks, but he looks at your inside of you, قلوبكم وأعمالكم, and your deeds and your actions. So we serve all people of all faith without riba. We were formed in 1987. We are the first and the oldest riba-free finance effort in the United States of America, capitalized by the American Muslim community with no foreign funds. Actually, the effort was started with a humble capital of $200,000, collected 5,000, 10,000 here and there. And alhamdulillah, we have grown to become an institution that manages a portfolio of servicing only homes and loans of about $550 million. We finance homes and cars and businesses and commercial real estate, nonprofit community ventures, all riba-free. We serve all 50 states, the only institution that serves all 50 states, and our staff is trained to think and operate as a riba-free banking institution. These are the two branches that we operate from, one in the headquarters in California on the left-hand side and in Texas. And we have done a lot of services, growing the community. We do a lot of Islamic schools. Actually, one of the biggest institutions we have is Iman Academy, which has over 1,200, 1,500 students in the Houston area. We do doctors' clinics, doctors' hospitals and outpatient surgeries. We do Baskin-Robbins ice cream. We do bagel shops. We do KFC. By the way, the KFC that we have, all the stores we have are offering halal KFC in America. This is a picture of a school that we financed in Boston, Massachusetts. This is an Islamic center in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is an Islamic center, again, in the Dallas-Fort. We have financed Islamic centers and schools and churches throughout the United States because we serve all people of all faith. One of the most important achievements is what happened to us in the 2008 monetary meltdown. As a matter of fact, we've been followed by Time magazine and by most of the major media in the United States. We've been reported on in all the media in the United States. So you name it and you call it. In Economist magazine, Financial Times, Houston Chronicle, Dallas Morning News, Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times, and so on and so forth. And the Time magazine chief editor has been following us, and she called me up and said, well, Dr. Rahman, what have you done? I said, we have done very, very well. We have not been touched. Actually, because of our unique model, which focuses on the added value, the real added value of riba-free financing, all of our customers were not touched because we used the model to make sure that when you buy a home, we invest in a property that makes prudent economic sense. And that is what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. Non-performing loans were very little, almost nil. And the servicing portfolio we have is over $500 million. What is our vision and our mission? We first talk about the lifestyle. So we're not only just going out and carrying religion on our sleeves or telling people this and that, or only addressing the Muslim community. We address everybody. We address the Muslim ladies with a hijab and the Muslim ladies without a hijab. We address the brothers who are devout Muslims who are doing namaz and prayers, and we address the brothers who are not, because we want them to come home to feel what it is to be served as a devout believer. Illa ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And we hope this will invite them to become adherent to this wonderful faith we call Islam. So it's a movement to invite people of all faith to live riba-free. What is the riba-free lifestyle? We wanted to popularize RF finance and lifestyle. We want to demonstrate the added value of riba-free financing, and we want to comply with and benefit from the existing US banking laws and regulations, which are the most sophisticated in the world, without violating the Sharia, which I call the Judeo-Christian Islamic law, as actually it was delineated in great details in many of my books that are published on the subjects. The target market are first generation immigrants, which is fine. We give them whatever is needed, but then we want to go into the second generation. These are the US born children who are not children anymore. They are now in their mid 30s, mid 40s. Some of them are in the 50s. My children are in the 50s. So, and we also invite them, and they are the new customers that are coming to us. And then the third generation is what I talk about. Now, the target market, we target all Americans of all faith. We are not only designed just to serve the Muslim community. Why? Because this is a discipline that is given to us by Allah and His Prophet ﷺ. It's not only for Muslims, it's for all people of all faith. And we do not want to make it look an exclusive club for the Muslims. We want to open it up for all people. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. To the whole world, the Prophet ﷺ was sent. So we do car financing and home financing, and we do small franchise businesses and professional businesses. The next thing I want to talk about is what's the brand name. We are producing a new brand name that we are popularizing in America, in the market. We call it RF, riba free. R like Roy, F like Frank. And so when people ask us, what's RF banking? Well, R stands for riba free in Islam. And in my book, I have done an extensive study of the prohibition of riba in Judaism and Christianity. It's called in the Old Testament ribit, R-I-B-I-T, and it's ribit free. And for those who do not believe in anything, we call it responsible finance. And that is what the brand name is. Now, we need to train a new generation of RF bankers to become the premier bankers from fresh graduates and interns of all faith. Now, our staff are young men and women who come from the best universities, and we insist on a minimum GPA of 3.5 because they're like a sponge. You can teach them and you can train them as compared to people who are experienced bankers for 20 years and 30 years. You know, very difficult to change, but you take the young men and women and you train them to become wonderful contributors to this wonderful goal that we're standing for. And for instance, we have a university called the Lariba Bank of Whittier Open University, which actually is held once every 6 months, where we teach the young men and women and the staff that we have had, people who have been with us for years, all the banking regulations and all the policies and the systems we used at Lariba Bank of Whittier. Here's the culture. It's a lifestyle. So the first thing we tell our customers is, if you have too many credit cards, you have too much credit card debts, please clean yourself up. And that is killing that credit card culture and using credit cards only to facilitate buying and selling, not as a borrowing tool. And instead of buying yourself a BMW or a Porsche, buy yourself a humble car, buy yourself a small Toyota or a small car, smart car for two. That's what I drive. I drive a small, smart car for two. It doesn't make you better by driving a Cadillac or a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce. Doesn't make any difference. What the difference is who you are and what your contributions are, and so on and so forth. So we need also to have a definition of what riba is all about. When I thought about this, and I spent 50 years of my life researching this subject, I said to myself, when you say khamr, alcohol, they tell haram. When you say zina, they say haram. But when you say riba, there are so many definitions because there's not a simple-minded definition for it. So my definition of riba that we are popularizing and is sticking, alhamdulillah, after all these years, riba is the renting of money at a price called interest rates, which is prohibited in Christianity, in Judaism, and in Islam. And I can tell you in other different philosophies. Now, the important thing that we want to concentrate on is that money is a fungible thing. Fungible means it changes its nature upon use. The dollar of 1971 is different from the dollar of 1985, is different from the dollar of 2020. Three different things. So, my apologies. Money can only be invested. Why money cannot be rented? Money is like an orange, like a loaf of bread. You cannot rent it, but you can invest it. I can invest in your health by giving you an apple, but I cannot rent you an apple because after 1 month the apple will perish and it cannot be yours. And you tell me, oh, I'll give you another apple. I say, no, no, no. If I rented you something, you have to give it back to me because I still own title to it, and so on and so forth. So our slogan is very simple. We do not rent money. We invest in you or invest with you. So riba again, and I want to focus, if there's something that I want you to come out of this whole presentation with, is renting money at a price called interest rate is called riba. So they can call it anything. You know, people say, we play the game, we call somebody who's doing Islamic banking. I say, well, brother, how much is the cost of financing? He said, oh, no, you know, we're going to have a rent of 5.5%. So we ask him, how did you figure out 5.5%? Well, fact of the matter is he checked the next door bank and he uses Islamic terminology and he says, oh, the rent is 5.5% and he's renting money. He's not renting assets. So what is the added value? The added value is we want to discover value in the market. What is the value of things in the market? There is a hadith by the Prophet ﷺ, I call it the hadith of commodities. In the hadith of commodities, the Prophet ﷺ says, الذهب بالذهب والفضة بالفضة والبر بالبر والقمح بالقمح والشعير بالشعير والملح بالملح والتمر بالتمر, which says that gold for gold, silver for silver. Now, what was the motivation of this hadith? The Prophet ﷺ used to be a tradesman. He used to lead caravans. So he went from Saudi Arabia to India to China and so on. And every one of these stations, he did exchanges and he collected currency. So he could not go back home with these currencies because nobody would understand them. So he had to value these currencies by converting them into a scale. That scale is the gold or the silver or the basic commodities that keep you alive. And that is the foundation of what I call the riba-free central bank. I just want to tell you this. Now, people think that the dollar is a dollar and it's a very strong currency. Yes, it is, because it's the currency of the world. But it is not the thing that you measure value with. Why? If I ask a brother here, brother Mulid Abdul Rahman, I see Mulid Abdul Rahman and I see Valeria Rodriguez. So I say, well, how high are you? How tall are you? So Valeria will say, I am 5'6". I'm not sure if you are 5'6" or not. But the question is, what is a foot? A foot is a bar of a precious metal that is so big and is kept in the London Museum of Measurements. And so what she's telling me is that I am 5 times as tall as this bar. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to measure value, you have to relate it back to precious metals, gold and silver, or bring it back to basic commodities, staple food that keeps you alive. At the time, the matrix was very simple, time of the Prophet. And it was actually barley, wheat, dates, and salt. Of course, now the matrix is much bigger, and that's what I call the foundation of central banking. So what we did something interesting. I said, if we know the price of a home in dollars, and we know the price of gold in dollars, we can take the dollar out and ask the question, how many ounces of gold will be necessary to buy a home. And this is what we got. This is the price of gold, which is actually highly politicized, and we can have another seminar on that later on. And this is the price of homes in the United States. So if we take the dollar out, what happens? Look at the home prices keep going up and up in dollars, but look at it in gold. It's an amazing thing. In gold, it actually is cyclical. It looks like somebody has been manipulating behind the scene this relationship. And you look at that, it required 700 ounces of gold in 1968 to buy a home. It went down to 100 ounces of gold in 1980. It went up to 650 ounces of gold in 2003, 2004, and so on and so forth. Actually, look at that area, and that actually, this area between 2003, 2005, and 2008 was the area where we had a red flag telling all of our customers to be careful about buying a home, and you have to scrutinize the value of that house accordingly. I don't want to spend a lot of your time on this. This is the price of homes and the price of oil. Again, here is the oil prices. You see all the oil prices up and down and up and down in terms of gold. We have actually a quarterly report, internal report, on the prices of homes and gold and oil in terms of commodities, gold and silver, in terms of rice, in terms of wheat, and so on and so forth. So what is the added value? We invest prudently by marking things to the market. So if you call a riba-free banker and tell him, well, what's the interest rate of the day? We tell the customer, sorry, Mr. Customer, we do not deal in interest. We do not rent money, but we want to know where you are buying your home, what neighborhood. So we know in that neighborhood how much is the rental rate of a similar home in the active market in dollars per square foot. And actually, we ask the customer, get us 3 documented estimates, and your financial officer get 3 documented estimates. And this way, we know how much this home will rent for. Let me show you this slide. On the left-hand side, it shows you what a riba bank does. You go to any bank, Chase, Citibank, or Standard Chartered Bank in Pakistan. So in that, in the conventional bank, they say, well, I'm going to rent you 1 million rupees for 7 years at an interest rate or a rental rate of 7%. And the unknown is the monthly payment. At Lariba, we do exactly the opposite. At the Bank of Withia, we do exactly the opposite. We say, we are going to invest with you 1 million rupees for 7 years, and we know how much is the rent in the active market, and our proprietary model, which we call the riba-free model, calculates the rate of return on investment of that investment. Does it make economic sense or not? So there are 3 scenarios. One scenario says that the rate of return is 20%. We tell the customer it makes economic sense, and we're going to invest with you, but we compare the monthly payment to the monthly payment that is asked from Bank of America or Wells Fargo or Citibank and so on. We tell the customer we're going to lower the rent voluntarily so we can compete with the riba banks. We do not want to be accused of using Islam to gouge people, to get more money out of people. We want to compete with the riba-based bank. And I do this personally from a religious standpoint. Why? Because if anyone goes and deals with these banks because they're less expensive, and he goes on the day of judgment, asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why, Ya Muhammad, did you go and do riba? He said, because Yahya Abdul Rahman has been charging me 30% more, Ya Allah. So this man is excused because the foundation of Sharia is la darara wa dirar, and that is you cannot hurt yourself by applying the Sharia. And who's going to be on the hook? Yahya Abdul Rahman. How come you made riba-free financing disadvantageous, more expensive to people And that is the thing. I don't want to go more than that, but here are the references we have. The first reference, I wrote a book in 1994. It's available on the internet. It's called Lariba Bank. And then in 2010, I was called by John Wiley in 2009 to author a book, the first ever book in America, published by the largest publishing house, John Wiley. And we published it in 2010, sat down on the Amazon.com website for 10 months, the top 10 of its category, 10% of its category on the list of Amazon.com top sales. We sold about 12, 13,000 copies of it. And then they asked me in 2013, 4 years later, to do a textbook. So we have a textbook called The Art of RF Banking and Finance. And that book, mashallah, sold about 8,000 copies. And it's being used by many universities now in the United States and overseas. Overseas, I can tell you, in Kazakhstan, in in Turkey, in Kazakhstan, Turkey, and in South Africa now as a reference textbook. They are teaching Islamic banking and finance. In 2016, it was also translated into Turkish. There are 2 lead papers that actually were published by the premier research center in Malaysia called ISRA. ISRA stands for the International Sharia Research Academy in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, run by the Central Bank of Malaysia, and it is in Arabic and in English. For those who need a copy of it, it actually documents our model, and that's a very unique model, never used by anybody else, by us, and it's called Bay' al-Istithna. And as a matter of fact, this talks about it, and it's based on a very simple sigat bayur, or a way of selling. The Prophet ﷺ sold his camel. He sold the camel that transferred the title of ownership from him to the buyer, with the exception of the use of rak, of the use. And he asked him that he can use it to send him home. And that was actually the beginning of this form of selling. So you transfer title to the ownership of your partner, and you participate in the rent that you agree to. The results, we have superior performance and minimum non-performing loans if they exist. Doesn't exist actually. We weathered the crisis in 2008, and I can talk about challenges later on, but then we can discuss it. This is my email address and my telephone number. And thank you very much for your attention. And I'll be delighted to answer any questions you might have. Jummah Mubarakah to you, a happy Jummah and a blessed Jummah to you all. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa tabi'in.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful presentation. There is a question by Muhammad Ibrahim. I am unmuting his mic.
This is Brother Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Where are you located, Brother Muhammad?
Yes, I have a question.
Where are you located?
Nigeria.
Nigeria, Lagos or?
Maiduguri, Borno State.
MashaAllah. I know your country very well.
You're welcome. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. We really enjoyed it. But my question I intend to raise is, on your last slide, second to the last slide, you mentioned that the title and the ownership will be with the customer from the beginning to the end. But the issue I want to raise is, hope there are no legal implications as regards that.
The legal, go slowly, please, because the connection is not very good. The legal implication of what?
Yes, if the customer should have the title.
See, what we do, we go and buy together. Let's say the customer would pay 5%, 10%, 20%, and we pay 90%, right?
Yes.
And then we go and buy together, and then the customer will say, but I want to own this house. We say, no problem. You can buy our share at the same price. You pay us back over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years with no
Yes.
increase whatsoever. No increase
Yeah.
in that same amount of money. But then we participate in the rent that we agreed to. Understand?
Yes.
So
Yes.
as you pay us back, then the distribution of rent is correlated to that pay us back. Now, whereas in the beginning, you get 20, 80, and then 20 becomes 25, 30, and 40%, and so on. And it's all explained
Yes.
in the paper. Please make the sister Shugafta aware of what you need. I can send you the paper in English. You can read it, inshallah.
It's okay. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Say hello to Nigeria for me.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Thank you. You're welcome. Excellent.
Any other questions?
Participants, you can also ask your question in the chat box.
I
Sir, there's a
I
question
did,
in the chat box.
Sister Bisma.
Yes, sir.
Salam alaikum, Sister Bisma.
Wa alaikum assalam, sir.
MashaAllah. Make it loud so I can hear you, please.
Sorry, sir. Sir, there's a question in the chat box that what are the requirements of opening an account in any of the Islamic banking centers? Are they same as the conventional banks?
You went very fast. Slowly, please, because the connection is not very good.
Sorry, sir. Sir, basically, there is a question in the chat
Slowly,
box
slowly,
that
slowly.
what are the requirements of opening an account in any of the Islamic banking centers?
Yeah.
Are they same as conventional banks?
Yeah. Let me tell you something very important we have to be aware of. There are two layers of compliance when you deal in a sophisticated system like that of the United States. One layer is the regulatory framework of the United States banking system. And the other layer is the Sharia layer that we abide by. You understand, sister? So the requirements are very simple. I want to go get to know who you are. How do I know? By knowing what your ID is, what your information, and so on and so forth. I want to know if the person who's opening an account is an honorable person or not. And we have systems in the United States that can check on your track record on your behavior over so many years. Nothing is forgotten in America. So and so on and so forth. But as far as the size of the deposit, it doesn't matter. You can open an account for $5, for $20, for $5,000, for $5 million, and we will be delighted to be at your service, inshallah.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, there is another question that what is the exact definition of riba?
Oh, riba, in my humble opinion, it's not the exact, because here's one thing. Exact definitions are done behind closed doors when scholars sit down and meet in a scholarly fashion. Let me ask you, are you married, Sister Bisma?
No, sir.
Inshallah, you'll be married. But I am married. So they ask me, did you read your marriage contract? How many of those who are in the audience read their marriage contract? Dr. Kabir, did you read your marriage contract?
Yes, I did.
You did. You're one of the very few. I didn't read. But what I'm trying to say is, it is very important to do things in a folkloric way that people can understand. And my very simple definition of riba is, it is the act of renting money at a price called interest rate. And money is not for rent. Money is only a medium of exchange, of valuation of the profit and the loss, but you cannot rent it. Why? If you rented from me $100,000 in 1971, and you tell me, oh, I don't take riba, I will give it back to you in 2020. I say, no, sister, you can give it back to me at $100,000, but what about the inflation and so on? Let me apply the profit discipline. I'm going to measure the $100,000 in 1971 in terms of ounces of gold. At that time, an ounce of gold was $35. That would buy you 22,850 ounces of gold in 1971. Do you know how much that 2,850 ounces of gold worth today, Sister Bisma? $4.8 million. So the dollar of 1971, the dollar of 1980 is different from the dollar of 2080. They look the same. They are still greenback. They still got the same design essentially, but the value is not there. And the Hadith of Prophet says you have to measure it against gold, against silver, against rice, against wheat, and so on and so forth. We have all of these data. So to answer your question, riba is the art of renting money at a price called interest rate. Now people will say, oh, there is also misrepresentation and so on, and we can do the details. But the folkloric definition is that simple definition. My goal is to touch people's hearts and minds so they can understand the meaning of it. I hope I answered the question. Any other questions?
May I add something to what Dr. Yahya Abdul Rahman
Yes,
said?
Dr. Khalid.
Okay, so in order
Good
to
to see you.
understand with
Good to see you,
modern,
Dr. Kabir.
yeah, in order to understand the modern parlance, so any financial contract where you see extra return is combined with guarantee is a modern definition of riba. So, you know, when you say money for rent with fixed, and that is haram. But if the money is converted into a capital, productive capital by using labor or some other means, and that generate profit, and you are allowed to uh, earn that profit, a percentage of it, but that profit is not guaranteed. So if somebody says, okay, so when you borrow money from a bank or you give money to someone 10%, so you are setting the amount of return guaranteed. So to the best way I remember, any financial contract which has return plus guarantee combined together is a riba instrument. And that is a definition I try to remember. And that is helpful for me.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see a lot of names here. MashaAllah. I see
Yes.
great. I see, of course, Jagufta. I see Saya, Idi.
So there is another question in the chat box that for the RF credit card, what is the underlying contract used? And is there compounding of penalty charges upon continuously defaulting on repayment?
Wallahi, if you can go slowly, I would appreciate it.
Sir,
Jagufta.
kindly read the question in the chat box. It's available there. I guess you would get more better understanding.
Oh, the book is available on Amazon.com. Actually, you can buy it also used for a lower price, but it's available on Amazon.com. And mashallah, we've sold about 20,000 of the first and the second edition by the grace of Allah. And you can find it on Amazon.com.
There's a question I want to take. Somebody asked about Pakistan, how you can make it a river-free country. You know, you'll be surprised to know this in Pakistani constitution. You are not allowed to do anything which is based on riba. But you see, you have banks in Pakistan charging riba. So now, one thing which is legal, the other thing is a practice. So if there is a movement, you have to make public aware the bad things or the, you know, the evils of riba, and if they understand, and if you make this also mechanism ready at the same time, so they will be attracted to this industry. Right now, for example, let's say I'm about to retire and I will live off my retirement income. Now, I want some sort of guarantee that I will get a certain amount of money each month. Now, if you invest in Islamic product, your return is not guaranteed. So some way that fixed return has to come to you. And so you have to design a mechanism so that happens to you. Otherwise, I'm being, you know, my entire life savings is invested in an instrument which is very risky. I'm not going to follow that. So there are also practical realities you have to come up with. But mashallah in Pakistan, I'm original from Bangladesh. You do have a good number of scholars who are working day and night in order to make the country riba free. And the government is also moving toward that direction. But it will take time. You have to remember the banking system that we see today is about 400 plus years old. It took them 400 years to make it the way we see it now, or to perfect it. And Islamic banking is 50 years old. So we are going through like a growing child. We will be making mistake, we're learning from a mistake, and eventually people will, it will get more acceptance to the public. And inshallah, sooner or later, everyone will see the beauty
Inshallah.
of no riba
Inshallah.
movement.
I want
Inshallah.
I want to devote more time for questions, please, from you. We don't want to talk. I want to hear from you, your feedback. We got a wonderful number of audience here. Ask questions, and I promise to give you a very quick and short answer so we can cover as many of you as possible. Any questions?
Sir, there's a question by a person named iPhone. I'm unmuting his mic so that he can ask a question from you
Is it
directly.
Besma? Is that Besma again?
Yes, sir. Basically, I am the moderator for this meeting.
You are what?
Sir, the moderator for this meeting.
You are the moderator?
Yes, sir.
Oh, very nice meeting you. Yeah, if you can ask people to open a microphone and ask us questions, this is a wonderful opportunity. We cannot get this wonderful audience. Allow them to speak. I mean, we don't talk politics. We don't talk controversial subjects. Let them speak.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Who is this, please? Alaikum salam. This is from an iPhone, right?
Yeah, Mohammed Lawal Hassan from Kano, Nigeria.
Oh my goodness, we got Nigeria again. Very good. Assalamu alaikum,
Kano,
Hassan.
Kano, northern Nigeria, which is predominantly Muslim. The majority of our banks are conventional banks. We have, however, we have one or two Islamic banks, such as Jaiz Bank. They are struggling and doing all their best to put into practice some of the issues that we have raised in this lecture. And because it is relatively new, even though we are Muslims here, people tend to have challenges to believe in some of the policies that they implement and so on. So I would like, I joined a little bit late. I would like perhaps a video of a video recording of this lecture so that we'll understand it better. And perhaps you send me your email for further correspondence, please.
Sure, I have
your email.
I will be glad to share with you my email. I'll put it up again on the screen.
Okay, please.
Here it is.
No, just put it on the screen. Put it on the screen so that I'll be able to.
I will put it on the screen. I'm putting it on the screen right now. I'm trying.
Brother, presentation will be shared with you.
Can the sister help us out with the sharing?
Please put his email on the screen so that I can screenshot it.
One second. Let me share.
Yeah, your email, please.
Are you opening the sharing, Sister Bisma?
Sir, you are the co-host. You can share your screen with us.
I can share?
Or you can share the slides you have shared before.
I'm trying to go down. I'm going to get this down. 1 second. Here it is. Make this bigger, and we'll do this. And this is my email address, yarahman@msn.com.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Please open the microphone, Bisma, for people to ask questions.
Yes, sir. We are providing them permission to unmute their mics.
Very good.
Brother Maulid Abdurrahman, you can unmute your mic.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam, Brother Mulid.
Welcome. Thank you very much for surprising and interesting seminar and lecture. I appreciate and thank you very much your time, your energy. I'm from Somalia.
Oh, mashallah. Where in Mogadishu or where?
No, in this current time it's not Mogadishu and other city, other area.
Where are you now?
Garowe city.
Oh, Delaware City. Oh my goodness. Welcome to America.
Yeah.
I know.
That.
Well, I
Okay.
tell you, I come from Egypt, so if you look into my body, I have so much meat from Somalia because we imported a lot of meat from Somalia in Egypt.
MashaAllah. First of all, I'm thank you for AlHuda program, and I'm welcoming and interested to hosting one day or in the future, near future in Somalia.
Akwai Islamic banking da ya fi namu nan Nigeria.
I can't hear Bisma.
Yanzu zan yi.
Hello.
Can I hear?
Friends ya sa su suna cewa ba su san lokacin da nan ba.
Hello? Yes?
Can you hear?
Yes, Brother Maulid, you can speak now.
Okay.
Can you come, Brother Bullet, can you come close to the microphone, please? Get the microphone close to you. I saw your picture already, but get the microphone close to you.
Okay, and AlHuda program and AlHuda leaders, I'm saying welcome to Somalia in the future and to hosting and like this workshop seminars to hosting in Somalia, Mogadishu. It's very important because of it is to spread the aim and the concept of Islamic banking in the all of the world. So it's very interesting. Somalia, it is an all Muslim banking private. It is full of Muslim and private bankeries. So it is very important to collaborate and hosting for the near future. So very interesting. And my question, in the aim of AlHuda and the whole to spread the world is very interesting in case of our Muslim community, Muslim aim to spread the whole of the world and to make for increase for our effort to
Inshallah, we hope so. Let me tell you, here's one important fact, historic fact. The Sayyida Aisha, radiallahu anha, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, was asked, what was the character foundation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? She said, ما خير رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بين أمرين إلا واختار أيسرهما. Whenever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given a solution to a problem, and he gave two solutions, he would start from the easy to achieve solution and then gradually go to the more difficult one. So like Dr. Kabir said, we have been only 50 years in this business, so we do the best we can. We spent a lot of time talking about contracts and everything else, but we never talked about the application, the added value. See, and this is what we're focusing on these days. You know, if somebody who doesn't believe in anything comes to you and says, what is your added value? I'm not going to tell him you're going to go to paradise because he doesn't know even what paradise is. You understand, Brother Mulud? You see what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Inshallah, inshallah. And we are not out. We are not out to discredit or demolish or destroy other systems. That's not what the Prophet ﷺ did. The Prophet presented a system and he showed people how attractive it is. And because they were sold on the attractiveness and how good the system is, they followed it. That is what we need to do. We need to present the added value of what you do. It's not only cents and dollars and so on. It is you, how you behave, that you are known to be, you are your word. Your word is your contract. When you make a promise, you fulfill that promise. When you go and give advice to people, you don't calculate how much commission you're going to make on him. You do it because you're doing it for your son, for your daughter, for your brother, for your sister. That is the whole idea that we want to do. And when you do this year after year after year, the problem is it takes time. It is not by advertising. It is not by propaganda. It is by touching people's hearts and minds and pockets, one person at a time. Wallahi, ya brother Mulud, 90% of our customers come to us through referrals. We're not very good in advertising. We're not very good in marketing, but we are out to serve people. And Allah is our witness on that. And we've been at it for 33 years. Thank you very much. Any other questions, Sister Bisma?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Brother Anwar, Anwar Tursunov.
Yes, sir. There are a question, and we had another speaker with us previously, Mr. Pervez Naseem, and he wanted to say something. So I have unmuted his mic so that he can share his views.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Yahya.
Who is this?
Pervez Naseem.
Assalamu alaikum, Pervez. Pervez. Okay,
Yes.
Brother Pervez, I have not seen him for 4 years. Now I'm seeing him. What is your picture, Pervez?
I'm too old to show my picture now.
What? Well, don't tell me about age. I mean, come and look at me.
Yeah, mashallah, we saw each other some probably 80.
This is brother Pervez Naseem, who is the guru of Islamic riba-free banking in Canada. Actually, he's done a fantastic job. He's got a company that is on the stock market. He's may Allah bless you. He is my model of how to do things. May Allah bless you, Pervez.
Jazakallah. I have a question for you.
Yes.
And that is some time ago when I met you at Vichy Bank, you were having some challenges with the regulators. So how do you manage to...
Oh, wallahi, with patience, perseverance, and my book, and our performance over the last 15, 16 years, wallahi, Allah is my witness, we are the most preferred with the regulators, by the grace of Allah. And they write in the report that the stellar performance, the good performance of this bank, the secret for it has been their discipline of RF banking, riba-free financing. Wallahi al-azim. For 2 years now, they write this in their report in the federal government Treasury Department report. So alhamdulillah.
It's good to hear that, mashallah, that you are operating this. This is a model for us to follow in United States. Jazakallah, may Allah give you long and healthy life to continue to serve Muslim community throughout the world, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, you too, brother Pervez. There is brother Anwar here who's looking for a question. Yeah, Bisma. Anwar Tursunova. He's, where are you from, Anwar?
Sir, I guess...
Bisma,
yes.
There is brother Anwar right under you.
Yes, sir, I'm unmuting his mic.
Yes.
Anwar, go ahead. Where are you from?
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Where are you from?
I am from Uzbekistan.
Where?
Uzbekistan.
I know Uzbekistan, I know Tashkent, I
Yes,
know
this is
Bukhara.
the,
I've been in
yes,
wonderful
this is the
countries.
place of Imam al-Bukhari, Imam al-Tirmidhi. There was Greek
I've been,
scholars.
you know, I've been to Turkestan. You know Yasawi,
Oh,
Ahmed Yasawi?
yes, Ahmad Yassawi, Bahauddin Naqshbandi.
I've been to the mausoleum of Ahmed Yasawi. Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Thank you for being a wonderful presentation, first of all. You know that I am a teacher by profession. I
MashaAllah.
teach the accounting, the university students. And I am so interested in Islamic banking, in Islamic finance. I am learning the theory. I have learned all the theory, but I need some practice. Unfortunately, you know, nowadays we don't have any Islamic banking bank as well as the Islamic window in our commercial banking system. And our population, the 35 million, and 95 of them are the Muslim. The problem, we don't have any options. So I need to do some practice in Islamic banking. So could you give me the suggestion to do the practice in Islamic banking in order to introduce to my society or to serve the Ummah, especially in our country? What's your suggestion?
Inshallah, we will make a dua, inshallah, that things will ease in your country. And you know, now that you are very close to Turkey, inshallah, something will happen. Inshallah, make a dua, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
I've been very close to Turkish Islamic banking developments. Inshallah, it will come to Uzbekistan, inshallah.
Okay, thank
Make
you.
a dua. But you know, you heard some of the principles, then you can share it with people. If I can be of any service, please let me know. I'll be delighted to, inshallah. We'll make a dua.
Okay.
Brother Parvez Naseem, we talked to Parvez. Who else do we have?
Sir, we have another speaker.
Mazhar Abbas or Khizar Ali or Diki Wahid from Indonesia. I got Diki Wahido in Indonesia. And Idi Saleh. And what else? I think Nushid Virji. Nushid, salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Where are you from? Where are you stationed at?
Orlando, Florida.
Orlando. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Salam alaikum, Nushid.
Alaikum salam.
You have a question?
Sir, basically, Brother Nasheed Viraji is our next speaker. And I guess I should introduce him and let him speak or his point of view on this. And we will continue this question answer session afterwards. So
I will have to, Basma, I am at work right now, so I have to go back to work so I can earn a living. And I appreciate your listening, and may God bless you. And I'm at your service, inshallah. Remember us in your dua. We wish you a very blessed Jummah Mubarakah, inshallah, to all of you and your families. May God bless you and protect you. If you allow me, Sister Basma, can I say goodbye?
Yes, sir. Surely, I know you were in a hurry, so you can leave the meeting. Basically,
thank you. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Kabir. Assalamu alaikum, Parvez Naseem.
Assalamu alaikum. Actually, I have to go too. I have another meeting.
All. I wish I can call your name. I got Mulid, I got Anbar, I got Ojala, I got Natali, I got Khizar, I got Mazhar, I got Valerie Rodriguez, Dilshad, Bufran, what else? Mahjabeen, mashallah, Sheikh. Zubair Mogul is here too. I can see his name, but not his picture, I hope, inshallah. And Brother Amadou May, most likely from Nigeria, and Salihu Casey, and Saya, and who else? Adama, Muhammad Bilal, Abdullah Bala, Sister Hannibal Nokem, and on and on. Remember us in your dua, and God bless you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam, sir. Take care. Thank you for this insightful session. And Mr. Kubi, if you want to continue, you can. But if you have some sort of commitments, you can say goodbye also.
Yeah, I need to say assalamu alaikum to everyone. I have another session actually already started 1 minute ago. So good luck with the rest of the presentation. I'm going to miss the last presentation. And I have given my contact details on the chat box, so you can contact me anytime for anything. Okay?
Thank you so
Assalamu
much.
alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you so much, sir. Allah Hafiz. So
Allah.
our next speaker is Nishad Viraji. I hope, sir, I have made you the co-host so that you can share your slides. And let me introduce our next speaker. That Nishad Viraji was born in Italy in 1971 and has lived in Florida since 1975. Nishad earns a degree in business administration from the University of Florida and then went to a successfully completed his service 65 NAST examination to become a registered investment advisor representative. Based in our Orlando area office, Nishad is the CEO of Viraji Investments. Nishad is on the board of Advanced Law, a Washington, D.C. based legal consulting firm that works with some of the largest companies in the world to help them retain quality law firms that have been carefully vetted to provide superior value. Living in Longwood, Florida, Naushad is happily married with 3 children. His personal interests includes golf, tennis, and spend leisure time with his family. So, sir, I would like you to continue with your presentation. I hope this session will be very insightful for our participants. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, your slides are visible.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me get started. I'm following some really good speakers here, so there's a little bit of pressure. All right, Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to start by thanking the AlHuda Center of Islamic Banking and Economics. This organization is well known and respected all over the world. I'm impressed with the caliber of programs and insights that they offer. I also thank the audience for attending today and applaud your initiative to learn more about Sharia compliant investing. I'm happy to be here in the company of such well-known and knowledgeable speakers. Most of the presentations have been focused on Islamic finance and mortgages. My focus will be more on the investment side. 2020 has been a challenging year for many of us. Here in the United States, we have over 250,000 deaths due to COVID-19 and a rising infection rate. We also have a polarized political environment. People are worried about their physical and financial well-being. It's with this backdrop that a discussion about Sharia compliant investing can be very relevant. Halal investing strategies are uniquely focused on avoiding debt. We believe this helps ensure that investors are buying into the types of investments that will be more stable in a volatile market. I suspect our audience today already understands the importance and value of Sharia compliant investing. In this presentation, I want to discuss active and passive investment strategies for Muslim investors. It has been well documented that the Muslim population in both the United States and Canada have been growing steadily over the years. Muslims are increasingly becoming a more attractive demographic in terms of education, age, and wealth. Some of these factors were covered earlier in some of the other presentations. Many new financial advisors are focusing on Sharia compliant investment industry. Sharia Portfolio is perhaps one of the older firms focused on wealth management in the Muslim community. They started in 2003 and now serve clients in 26 states around the country. Sharia Portfolio is also the first US Sharia compliant firm to expand into Canada under the name Sharia Portfolio Canada. Many other newer firms are now also focusing on the Muslim community and working to meet their needs. So before I get too deep into the presentation, I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. I'm not here to give you financial advice. I'm here to just give a presentation on active versus passive investing and some strategies that may be of interest to you. For more detail or to get personal guidance for your situation, you need to speak with a financial advisor. If you don't have an advisor, contact me afterwards. I'll be happy to connect you with someone in your area. So a little bit about myself. As the moderator mentioned, I grew up here in Florida. I graduated from the University of Florida. Why did I take an interest in Sharia compliant investing? Well, being from the Muslim community, I felt pretty strongly that halal investing is an incredible alternative to conventional investing. And to prove that, I started a small hedge fund, which I used to show that halal investing can perform just as well as the general market. The only problem is I was wrong. Sharia compliant investing actually performed far better than the general market. So in some of the interviews I've done, like one of the pictures here on the slide, I was speaking with Ali Velshi on Al Jazeera, and he was asking, how much of a return do you have to give up to be Sharia compliant? And the answer to that is you don't give up any return. The only thing you give up is investments in un-Islamic industries like alcohol or adult entertainment or gambling, for example. So I'm very pleased to be able to tell you the results of investing in a Sharia compliant manner are as good, if not better, than the general market. And it's on that principle that I founded Sharia Portfolio in 2003. I founded Sharia Portfolio Canada in 2019. So that's one of our newer companies that is just now getting traction in the Canadian marketplace. I also founded SP Funds in 2019, and SP Funds is going to be the focus of my discussion today, because when it comes to active and passive strategies, there's some tools that you need to be able to employ either really well. And I'm pleased to let you know that SP Funds is providing those tools to investors all over the world so that you can maintain or manage your own Sharia compliant portfolios. So the agenda today is a short discussion about SP Funds to just tell you what this is, what is this company all about and what does it do? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about active investment strategies and how you can employ an active strategy if you'd like, or alternatively, a passive investment strategy. So these are the two main points of my presentation today, active investing and passive investing. You may have heard about some of these things already. There's a lot of talk these days about the two. There's also a lot of discussion on which one is better. My point today is not to say one is better than the other, but to just explain each of them and also to explain how you can get started with either of these approaches. So we'll start with what is SP Funds. I'll start with our mission. SP Funds is dedicated to providing the investment community with socially responsible, ethical, non-levered ETFs that can serve as important diversification tools. That's our PR company's long-winded way of saying we're offering Sharia compliant products to the market. We were founded in 2019 here in the US, and our company is a joint venture between two wealth management companies that are pretty well known in North America, Sharia Portfolio Inc., which is the US wealth management firm, and Sharia Portfolio Canada, which is our newer Canadian financial advisory firm. SP Funds is the largest family of Sharia compliant ETFs in North America. The company currently offers two unique exchange traded funds on the New York Stock Exchange. The first symbol is SPUS, which is the SP Funds S&P 500 Sharia Industry Exclusions ETF. I know it's a long name, but what it effectively means is that SPUS is all of the stocks within the S&P 500, excluding anything that's not Sharia compliant. So this is going to be a very important point later when I talk a little bit more about passive investing. But this is effectively an index of the S&P 500, but only the Sharia compliant stocks that are part of that index. So somebody who just wants to invest in the top companies in North America can easily do so just by buying SPUS. Our other ETF is SPSK, which is the world's first Sharia compliant Sukuk ETF. So this is also an index, but this is an index of global sukuk from all over the world. The sukuk market is very interesting. And if you're not familiar with sukuks, we do have quite a few presentations on this topic itself. A sukuk is effectively an alternative to bonds. Bonds are obviously focused on riba. Sukuks take riba totally out of the equation. Instead of being focused on credit and credit quality and interest, sukuks are backed by assets. So for example, if you wanted to buy a car and you went and got a loan, that would be a riba-based transaction. If instead I leased you a car, I went and bought the car and I leased it to you, that would be more like a sukuk type transaction where you're just leasing a product. So a collection of these from all over the world is the focus here under the symbol SPSK, the world's first global sukuk ETF. Now, I said we have two products. I'm just going to mention real quickly that we have a third one coming out in the next 45 days, and that symbol is SPRE, and this is going to be a global Sharia REIT. So if you have interest in real estate, this is one of the easiest ways to own Sharia compliant real estate all over the world. Another thing that SP Funds does is offer private equity funds for accredited investors who are looking for high yield and Sharia compliant real estate opportunities in North America. So this is something we don't market as much, being that it's a private equity fund. We're not allowed to market it, but if you are an accredited investor, somebody who has a net worth of over $1 million and are looking for this kind of opportunity, you can contact me afterwards. I'll be happy to tell you more about it. For this presentation, I really want to focus more on the publicly traded ETFs and focus my discussion on that. So why is all of this important? Why are there so many Sharia compliant firms all of a sudden throughout North America? The other speakers that you heard from, as well as so many other firms that have been popping up all over both the US and Canada. Well, the fact of the matter is that demand has grown substantially in the last 2 decades. For one thing, Muslims worldwide number 1.8 billion. That's a really big number. That's 24% of the entire world. So roughly 1 out of every 4 people on the planet identifies as Muslim. And this Muslim community is growing very fast, especially here in the US and Canada. And on top of that, the Muslim community is becoming very affluent. One of the earlier speakers mentioned some research from Pew Research and also from Gallup polls. And they've both conducted research that has stated that the Muslim community is typically better educated, younger, and has a higher per capita income than the average population. That's a very attractive demographic. So most of North America's financial institutions previously have ignored the needs of Muslim investors. But this is something that's beginning to change. The demand for investment solutions that conform to Islamic values is continuing to grow rapidly. And it's very clear that Sharia compliant financing is going to continue to grow even more. So this is why Sharia compliant investment solutions are so important to consider. So I'm going to talk about strategies, and we'll start with an active investment strategy. So before going into what this means and how this works, I'm going to just show you a graph of how the market has done, the S&P 500 in particular, over a long period of time. So looking at this graph, you can see the growth of the S&P 500. And it's obviously not a straight line. There are ups and downs in the market. The area that's circled in red, this is the 2008 financial crisis. So you can see that there was a substantial drop in the market. This obviously was due mainly to debt and debt levels around the country. And it's alarming how riba created such a big problem. The good news is for Sharia compliant investing, our industry was not impacted as much as what you see here. The stock market dropped 39% that year. A lot of Sharia compliant investments dropped 10 or 15%. So it was substantially better. And I think that's a lesson for the rest of the world. And in fact, it's because of this that so many non-Muslims also invest in Sharia compliant products. They're not interested in Islamic values. They're interested in returns and stability. So I wanted to show this long trend because there are people who are afraid of the stock market, or they feel that, isn't it too risky? Isn't it possible for me to lose so much? Well, if you focus long term, like what our chart here is showing you, then there's a relatively steady upward trend, which works out to about 9 to 10% a year growth. So the markets are growing at about that rate over a long-term period. So if I was your financial advisor, I would tell you, if you're thinking about investing, it should be a long-term proposition. Anyone who's thinking, well, can I just put away money for 6 months, probably shouldn't be in the stock market, because nobody can tell you what's going to happen in the next 6 months or even in the next year. So what are the goals of investors? First off, I mentioned earlier, the average annual return of the S&P 500 is usually between 9 to 10% per year, which is not bad. Now, someone who is actively managing their portfolio, or if you have a financial advisor who's offering active portfolio management, typically the goals are, for aggressive investors anyhow, to try to achieve a return that's even higher than that. Now, that's something that's very difficult to do consistently, but it is very possible to do it, especially years like this. Sharia compliant investments, especially active and even passive investments, have outperformed the S&P quite well. Doing that long term is a more challenging proposition. But not everybody that's investing is focused on just trying to beat the average market return. Most investors have goals related to their personal financial aspirations. So, for example, your interest may not be to beat the market. It may just be to have a comfortable retirement. Or maybe you're trying to save up for Hajj, or you're trying to save money to buy your first home or your second home. There can be a lot of different goals, and many of those goals have nothing to do with beating the market necessarily. And this is where a good financial advisor can assist you, because they're not looking at what's happening in the market. They're looking at what's happening with you personally, and what do you need? What is it that you need to do with your portfolio to meet your personal needs? So in an active strategy, investors or financial advisors can utilize what we call a core satellite approach. And that's one of the best ways of trying to actively manage a portfolio, because it gives you a little bit of safety as well as the ability to take some risks. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But I also want to mention that nowadays, many financial advisors have begun offering Sharia compliant investment strategies. So that's the good news for the general market. There's more competition. There are more firms now that are offering this service. 20 years ago, I didn't know any financial advisors in the industry. Of course, there were companies that were offering Sharia compliant funds, but not financial advice and wealth management. And that's why at that point we started Sharia Portfolio to focus on that. But the good news today is that there are many firms and even some of the conventional banks, including some of the largest in Canada, and even some of the larger ones in the US now have Muslim financial advisors who offer Sharia compliant investing. There are a lot of considerations on how to choose an advisor, and I'll talk about that towards the end of my presentation. But the good news is that they are out there. This core satellite approach that I mentioned earlier works something like this. You have a core holdings in your portfolio. So a portfolio is basically a collection of all of your investments. So you could have a portfolio that has only one stock, which obviously is not advisable because you're putting all your eggs in one basket. But You could have a portfolio of one stock, you could have a portfolio of 10 stocks, or you could have a portfolio of 100 stocks. So what we mean by a core satellite approach is that you can have an approach that allows you to tweak your portfolio to try and achieve a particular desired outcome in your investment strategy. For example, if your goal is to try and outperform the market return, then you can use a market index fund as your core holding, something like SPUS, the Sharia compliant S&P 500 ETF that I mentioned earlier. That could be a core holding that makes up maybe half of the portfolio. And then you could buy some individual stocks that you expect might perform better. If you're right about your stock selections, then the overall performance will be better than the market. If, on the other hand, your stocks don't work out so well, then you're still a little bit safer because you have this large core that basically includes hundreds of stocks in an index fund. So I mentioned earlier, the S&P itself has grown about 9 to 10% a year. So if you're using an ETF like SPUS as your core holding, then your expectation should be that that core holding is going to grow at about 9 or 10% a year. This year, it's actually up 20%. So this would have been a very good year to hold the ETF. But nevertheless, long-term average should be around 9 to 10%. So if you want to try and outperform the market, you can add what we consider satellites. So other stocks that make up your portfolio around this core. So stocks like Tesla, for example, that was one of the more popular ones in a lot of Sharia compliant portfolios earlier this year, and the stock has done extremely well. Zoom is another example. These are some types of companies, even Microsoft is another example, some of the types of companies that you could have bought as satellites. And when they do really well in years like this, then your performance will be well above the 10% average that we see in the market. If, on the other hand, if something horrible happened, and let's say some of these stocks do extremely poorly, then it doesn't bring the entire portfolio down as substantially as it would if you didn't have this core. So it is important to have a core. And it doesn't have to be SPUS. You could use any type of fund that's diversified and that you're comfortable with. SPUS is the only one in the market that's traded on the New York Stock Exchange that tracks the S&P 500, or at least all the Sharia compliant components in the S&P 500. So let's move on to talking about passive investing and what this is all, what this means. In the North American halal investing space, we first of all haven't had the option of investing in Sharia compliant ETFs until 2019. So it's only been a year that we've even had ETFs in the market. An ETF is a particular type of fund, an exchange traded fund. So they invest, they trade just like stocks, and they're as easy to buy and sell as any stock. And they're also available worldwide. So if you're overseas or in any other country, all you have to do is use a broker that has access to the New York Stock Exchange, and you can easily buy and sell these funds as much as you want. Because they're newer, some institutions like Emirates Bank, for example, had some investors that wanted to start buying these ETFs, and they just wanted to reach out and first just ensure they know what this is all about and understand our firm, and then they sign off on it. So if your bank is one that hasn't had Sharia compliant ETFs before, you can encourage them to contact us directly, and we can help make those available if they're not already. So an ETF is different from a mutual fund. Mutual funds have been available. ETFs have only become available in the last year. So let's talk about a little bit about the differences between these two types of funds. First off, ETFs usually have significantly lower fees than mutual funds. Oftentimes they're a quarter or a third of what you normally pay with a mutual fund, and that's not unusual. So why are ETFs so much cheaper? The reason is that they don't have to hire a big team of portfolio managers to figure out which stocks to buy. They're instead just buying whatever is Sharia compliant in the S&P in the case of SPUS. So there's a lot less overhead. So in turn, ETFs can charge much, much less than a mutual fund can. ETFs can also be traded like stocks in the market. So though I don't advise it, you could buy it today, sell it later today, or sell it tomorrow, and there's no issue. It would be just like any other stock. With mutual funds, that's not usually the case. You can put in an order to buy, and typically you have to hold them for 90 days before you're allowed to sell. And when you buy them in dollars, so not per share, and you don't know the price until after the end of the market day. So it works a little bit differently. Mutual funds usually offer active strategies, while ETFs normally offer passive strategies. So ETFs make it easy for anyone to employ a passive investment strategy. So what is a passive strategy? Typically, it means you first of all have a buy and hold mentality. As a passive investor, you're not looking to go in and buy and sell, throughout the day. And in addition to that, you're thinking more long-term. You want to hold securities that make up most of the market. So an index fund is perfect for that. So in passive investing, you typically use index funds. An index is basically just a pre-made basket of type of securities, whether they're stocks or sukuk or real estate. And when you buy a single ETF, you're actually achieving significant diversification with a single fund. If, for example, you made a choice to buy Tesla in your portfolio, you now have one stock. You could buy 9 more and have 10 stocks, and you're still not that diversified. You'd have to buy quite a few to really be well diversified, meaning having a lot of different companies in your portfolio so that if one does very poorly, it doesn't bring the whole portfolio down substantially. With a ETF, an index ETF, and with a passive investment strategy, you're achieving significant diversification already, because with a symbol like SPUS, you're getting hundreds of stocks with one purchase. So it's a very easy way to manage a portfolio. You can do this on your own. You can work with a financial advisor. Either way, a passive strategy can be very helpful for long term. I was asked to write an article earlier this year, which was published, I think it was in January, that talked about different types of allocations and how do you allocate a portfolio. The biggest problem has been that there have never been any alternative to fixed income in the Islamic investing space until, of course, we launched our SPSK ETF last year, our Sukuk ETF. So now it's very possible and very easy to have a passive investment strategy just using these two ETFs. So for example, if you wanted to be very aggressive, if you have a portfolio, you could allocate about 90% of it to SPUS and 10% to Sukuk. So you'd only have to buy these two ETFs and you would effectively have hundreds of securities that are reflecting what's happening in the market. And if you want to be aggressive, you could have more of the stock ETF and less of the Sukuk ETF. If, on the other hand, you want to be conservative, you're afraid that the markets are a little high, you're not sure what's going to happen next, you're worried about any kind of volatility, you could have a conservative strategy where you're only using maybe 30% of SPUS and 70% in Sukuk. The beautiful thing about Sukuk is that it doesn't tend to move as much as stocks do. And in the meantime, it offers a 2.5% dividend yield. So 2.5% isn't huge, but it's well above what interest rates banks give or what bond returns are oftentimes. So getting a 2.5% return while holding a longer term portfolio when you're expecting the markets to be more volatile, it's at least helping you beat inflation while you wait to see what happens in a market like this one, for example, where in the US, markets are at all-time highs. And with the vaccines in sight, people have become very optimistic. And so the markets have come up quite a bit. So if you feel that there's going to be turbulence or a big drop, then a conservative strategy may be a good way to go. If you're really not sure, you can take a middle of the road approach and have a more moderate type strategy where you're putting maybe 60% into SPUS, into the stock ETF, and 40% into Sukuk through SPSK. So you have a lot of options in the way you want to put together a passive strategy. And one of the good things is with these kind of strategies, you don't really have to come in and make a lot of changes. You can rebalance it periodically, maybe even once a year, come in and change up the strategy based on what you're expecting in the market, or just leave it long term. So this is a very easy way to employ a passive strategy. So as a quick recap, active investment strategies are more of a hands-on approach that involve regular buying and selling of securities. So with an active strategy, you could have a core, as I mentioned earlier, and then satellites that you're trading pretty regularly. These type of solutions, active solutions, tend to be pretty popular during volatile market cycles. A lot of investors are concerned about what's going on, and they like to let a professional manage their portfolio for them actively in the hopes of minimizing risk or maximizing returns. And that's totally fine to do. There are many Sharia compliant firms like Sharia Portfolio who offer active strategies. A passive investment strategy offers or involves less buying and selling. So it's more of a buy and hold approach. And it's usually done with index funds like the ETFs that I mentioned earlier, the SP funds ETFs. Historically, passive investments have performed better over time. In fact, most active investors have a goal of beating the S&P 500. Only about 20% actually do this. So one of the easy ways to invest is employing a passive strategy where you're basically getting or beating active investments 80% of the time and just buying into the market as a whole using these index funds or these ETFs that I mentioned. So how do you get started with either of these scenarios, active investing or passive investing? The easiest way is to just open a brokerage account with the firm of your choice, whichever country you're in. And if you want access to our ETFs, you want to make sure that they have the brokerage firm you use has access to the US market, particularly the New York Stock Exchange. And this will allow you to open an account that you can self-manage. And in this portfolio, if you want to use a passive strategy, you can do something similar to what I showed earlier, where you're just mixing the portfolio between the stock ETF and the Sukuk ETF and just change the percentages as to what you're comfortable with. So that's one very easy way to do it. One of the questions I get often is, well, what if I want to use an active strategy? How do I know which stocks to use? Which ones are Sharia compliant? One of the easiest ways to get that information is to just look at the prospectus of a Sharia compliant fund. So SPUS, for example, is already a collection of all of the Sharia compliant stocks in the S&P 500. So if you go to www.sp-funds.com, you can look up SPUS and get a list of all the holdings in that ETF. And you now will have hundreds of stocks to choose from to create your satellites around your core. So it's easy to get lists like that, and you can look at alternate Sharia mutual funds as well and do the same thing and get a list of stocks that you can buy that are all Sharia compliant. Effectively, someone's done the work for you, and you just access that list and self-manage your portfolio. Another option is to hire a financial advisor. So how do you do that? What are the things to consider when you're hiring a financial advisor? There are three things that I always suggest that you ask, before, proceeding with any advisor. The first thing is the investment philosophy. Now, the investment philosophy on investments is a whole nother topic. I typically speak for hours on this topic, so I'm not going to go into detail on that. But what I will say is that this is your hard-earned money that's being invested. So it's a good idea for you to understand what your financial advisor is going to do with it. So you can let them explain it to you. If you're not happy with their answer, talk to another financial advisor. See what the different strategies are. There are different ways to invest. There's strategies like fundamental analysis or technical analysis. So make sure you understand what's being done with your money. The other thing to ask, and don't be shy about this, is to find out, how does your advisor get paid? Are they paid commissions for selling you certain products or funds? Do they make a management fee for the money they charge? Is there are they fiduciaries, meaning is their best interest aligned with yours? Don't be shy to ask these questions, because sometimes knowing how a financial advisor is paid can be very telling to see if they really are working in your best interest or not. And then, of course, Sharia compliance. Are they offering a Sharia compliant approach? One of the problems oftentimes is that different people have different perceptions of what is Sharia compliant. I've seen advisors at some of the larger firms, here in the US, who will put together a portfolio and just throw in a couple of Sharia compliant mutual funds, and they still will hold stocks of companies in banking and finance and other haram industries. But because they have these Sharia funds, they say, well, this portfolio is Sharia compliant. So it's important for you to be aware that a lot of people are saying things are Sharia compliant. It's important to ensure that whoever you're working with has some kind of Sharia board or advisory, and that they have Sharia audits in place. If you're wondering about us, SP Funds, our Sharia auditor is a company called Raqaba. They're an independent company that looks at everything that we do and reviews all of the material, and then issues a Sharia certificate. Our Sharia certificates are on the SP Funds website. I'll put that up right now just so you can see. The website is sp-funds.com. So it's important to understand how the Sharia compliance works. One of the gold standards in Sharia compliance is IOFI. I think it was mentioned in one of the earlier presentations, and a lot of firms like Sharia Portfolio, for example, do follow IOFI guidelines. But it is important to understand how are they following it, and is there any kind of certification? So understanding that can help you ensure that you really are getting what you think you're getting in terms of Sharia compliance. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Sir, are you up for the questions?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, your voice is audible. Are you up for the
All right,
questions?
perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
There is a question. I guess there is a hand raised by Smayat Al Seem, and I am unmuting her mic.
Okay.
Hello, I am listening your all nice presentation. Thank you for Huda study group to provide very nice and lectures and webinar. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. My question is a lot of Pakistani researchers and PhDs come back to Pakistan to serve. But the unfortunate is the Pakistani government have a lot of problem for providing job. So we developed the one startup groups. So any funding any collaboration to collaborate these startup group to develop certain Muslim innovative products to secure the patent and royalty to the Muslim scholars. So any collaboration you have planned to these fund you provide the Muslim scholar to develop the sun innovation and secure the future for the innovative products.
So if I understand your question, you're asking about how our funds or any Sharia funds are supporting scholars in the industry. And my answer to that is that by having them involved as the part of our Sharia boards, or using firms like Raqaba that I mentioned, or many others that are in North America, we are supporting them by first of all, paying them for working in those capacities. They're offering a very valuable service and offering their time. And we're very happy to be able to pay them to assist us with our questions and offer us their advice and to review the products that we're putting out in the markets. So it's a win-win situation. We are collaborating with them. Even when we put together products like our real estate fund, we spent a lot of time working with, in this case, Raqaba, to review what we were doing and also other scholars as well, to ensure that what we're offering truly is Sharia compliant and equitable for everybody. And we believe very strongly in creating win-win situations. So for us, this is not all about what's just doing things that are in our own benefit, but we want to benefit the community. We're one of the very
Yeah.
few companies that
Yeah,
are
because the lot of in COVID, we understand the Muslim communities health sector dependent to the Western and non-Muslim products. So the non-Muslim products used by the some give the adverse effect and some is the positive effect. So why not develop the Muslim fund bank to develop the own product? A lot of Muslim capacity building situation better than last few decades. So why not Muslim scientists use for develop these products and the market to the whole country? So we think about at that time to the reverse the cycle because the a lot of adverse and harmful effect to the Muslim community to use the foreign research program and foreign agenda to ensure to give donation and in medical sciences lot of adverse effect. So I am the research field in last 20 decades. So I see the many problem to product to come to the foreign funding and donation. So we have the capacity, but we have the running, not the running funds to establish these capacity. If to invest these the Muslim scholars is available in Muslim words to develop the own product and develop the own patent to give the royalty self. Why not we can develop the disinfectant? How can it is a simple product? Why can we purchase the Dettol? Dettol is the entirety for the UK. A lot of opportunities available, but why we develop the own product but market by the Johnson& Johnson's. All our costumes of COVID we developed in the Faisalabad, but the sale in the Johnson& Johnson. Why we not develop the own brand to sell by tagging to the Muslims countries like Pakistan and Iran and other Muslim countries?
Well, two things that I'll mention. First and foremost, the good news is there are private equity funds that are coming up now in North America, and I think also in the UK. I don't know about Pakistan specifically, but there are private equity funds that are owned and operated by the Muslim community. And their goal is to invest in products or projects by Muslims in a lot of different fields, whether it's new chemical solutions or other types of household products or whatever it is. There is a private equity, actually a couple, I think there's a few of them now. Some of them operate as incubators to try to encourage Muslims in the community to develop their own solutions and launch their own companies rather than taking their innovations to other larger companies like Procter and Gamble or J&J. They could create their own company with their own ideas, and they just need the capital. And some of these private equity firms are doing that now. They're still relatively small. That's probably why you haven't heard of them as much, but they are, they are beginning to pick up. We actually had thought about doing that ourselves as well. We were thinking about launching our own private equity fund just for these kinds of projects. We decided that we'll start off with the basic solutions, which are
Yeah,
these.
we have in the developing of Muslim, lot of the investors Muslim countries available, but no Muslim brand car is available. No, we are dependent to the foreign product. We use the healthier product. We buy the foreign product. We use the simple syringes. We dependent to China. IV solution dependent to China. A lot of medicine dependent to the first world countries. The India is developed self. In lot of Western country developed to the pharma industry to invest India to India medicines market to the USA and the first world country. The certain funds available to the Muslim communities and Muslim developing countries to we develop the certain medicine to the sale in the first world country.
I think it's just a matter of time, quite frankly. Earlier in the presentation, I mentioned how the Muslim demographic is growing. Quite a while ago, actually not even that long ago, there weren't any Sharia compliant companies that were actually fully owned and operated by Muslims. Ours is one of those that is owned and operated completely by Muslims, and more are coming up. And it's just a matter of time, I think. The community is becoming more affluent. And a lot of our clients, a lot of Sharia portfolios clients actually are people who have accomplished quite a bit in some of these larger companies. And so I think the future is bright for the Muslim community. And don't forget, we are 1/4 of the world's population. So I strongly believe that we're headed in that direction. And I believe what you're suggesting or concerned about, I think it's just a matter of time. And I do believe that we will hit on those things as well.
If you develop the certain collaboration fund to the market and our society, there are a lot of project is available
Sir?
to our academia and the
Hello.
non-academia units. Thank you for giving me answer very briefly.
Thank you so much, sir, for your answer. And we will take a last question by Eddie Saleh, and then we will be concluding this session as it is almost 12 here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I had one question. Is there operational and liquidity difference between Sukuk and conventional bond?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that was one of the challenges for us when we were putting our ETF together, because it works very, very differently. There isn't necessarily an active market for Sukuk. And one of the challenges is that if you want to buy Sukuk right now, typically a lot of the minimums are $200,000. So unless you have a really, really large portfolio, is relatively inaccessible. And that's why we work so hard to create this product. Like I mentioned before, it is not based on credit or credit quality. It's not lending money to anyone. It's instead buying assets. It's an asset-backed product that is leasing out equipment or buildings or infrastructure. One of the best examples of how Sukuk works is the way Emirates Airlines grew. and took off. In their early years, they didn't have the money to just go out and buy hundreds of planes. So instead, they used a sukuk that bought the planes and turned around and leased those planes to the airlines. And after some time, as Emirates continued to grow, they were able to buy many of those planes. And a lot of companies, especially companies that have a lot of fixed assets, they rely on sukuk to purchase a lot of these properties or assets for them and lease it back to them until they're able to afford to buy it whole. So it's a really good model. And because it's asset backed, it has much less credit risk or even market risk because you have an asset that you own. Like in the case of say a shopping mall that used sukuk to buy the building that they have. The sukuk is bought it and is leasing it to the owner. Now, if the owner defaults or has some problem and they're not able to continue making lease payments, or they go out of business because of situations like this with COVID or whatever the issue is, the sukuk still owns that asset. That asset still has value. So that asset can either be sold or leased to somebody else. So it works very differently from a bond. A bond is based on your credit quality and your ability to pay back a loan. So they're two very different things.
Thank you very much.
It's my
Thank you,
pleasure.
sir, for your kind response. I guess now we should conclude the session. And I hope that your information was quite insightful for the participants and they learned something new today from you. And if you have to say anything, you can give your closing remarks, or otherwise, we will then conclude the session.
Well, I'll just mention that I'm very excited about where Sharia compliant finance in general is headed. And I want to again thank your organization, AlHuda, for being at the forefront and bringing events like this together so that we can make everybody aware of how things are moving along. And I'd also like to thank all the participants that joined us today who are taking an interest in Islamic finance, because I do believe Islamic finance is here to stay and that it's going to grow very rapidly going forward. So thank you again for attending. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you so much for all the acknowledgement and all the appreciation. And I am really honored to have you with us. Thank you so much for the presentation. And thank you so much, participants, to be a part of today's webinar. I hope that all the presentations were very informative for you guys also. And you learned something really insightful today from this session. And if you have any sort of questions, the profile of all the speakers will be shared with you along with their presentation, so that you can have, if you have any question, you can ask them in person. Thank you so much, sir, once again, and assalamu alaikum. Take care.
Wa alaikum salam.